Chapter 2888. The three elders were in a daze when they heard the crowd's discussions and hurriedly pushed the doubts which Yi Qing Luo had left for them to the back of their minds. Now, Miao Yi had become the sacred maiden. This was an unchangeable fact. For the future development of the Miao tribe, they had to think of a way to help Miao Yi to stabilize the hearts of the people. Yi Qing Luo pulled Miao Yi as they walked down the mountain path. Not long later, all the hubbub was isolated by their ears. The surroundings were filled with the rustling sound of the trees and grass. Faintly, they could hear the sound of the goo worms moving. If it wasn't for the Miao tribe's disturbance. Just looking at the Miao tribe's scenery, it was pleasing to the eyes. When they reached the bottom of the mountain, the Miao tribe's people were already at the land of the Goo King, witnessing the inheritance ceremony. The entire Miao tribe was extremely quiet. Miao Yi took a few steps and couldn't suppress the doubts in her heart. Qing Luo, what do you want to tell me? Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways at her and immediately looked towards the front as her footsteps slowed down. I intend to leave the Miao tribe. Where are you going? Miao Yi hastened her footsteps as she walked past Yi Qing Luo and stood in front of her, blocking her way. The Overlord's poison has yet to be cured. If you leave, what will happen to the Overlord? As Miao Yi said that, her beautiful eyes were filled with guilt. The Overlord's poison had yet to be cured. This was just an excuse. Yi Qing Luo was her only good friend and sister. She was also the only good sister who would disregard everything to stand behind her and become her backing. She knew that Yi Qing Luo would eventually leave the Miao tribe. She knew that she and Yi Qing Luo would eventually part ways. But she didn't expect it to be so soon. The feeling of reluctance started to spread in her heart. Yi Qing Luo saw through Miao Yi's thoughts. She laughed lightly as she raised her hand and rubbed Miao Yi's head. Silly girl, it's not like we won't meet again. As she said that, her hand slid down from Miao Yi's hair. Xian centrifugal worm and love worm is a hidden danger, and if it's not cured, I won't be able to rest assured. But the Miao tribe is already unstable because of me now. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes drooped as she sighed softly. Secluded Darkness Palace is targeting me. Didn't Miao Rongrong find them to deal with me? Miao Yi was startled. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. Miao Rongrong is merely a chess piece of the Secluded Darkness Palace. Her main motive is not to deal with you or the Miao tribe, but to deal with me completely. He recalled the dense demonic energy that controlled Miao Rongrong. He thought of the corpse controlling technique that old man Tsang had mentioned. Then, he thought of the Vice Palace Master and the group of rats that couldn't be completely annihilated, the Dark Forces. Things related to the Dark Nether Palace. In fact, they were all connected together. It was all a trap for her. The purpose of the underground forces was obvious. The Dark Forces wanted her profound heart jade. The one and only divine phoenix profound heart jade in her body. Then, was that the goal of Yu Palace as well? Qing Luo. Qing Luo? Miao Yi's voice suddenly rang beside her ear. Yi Qing Luo regained her senses. What did you say earlier? I said, if the Secluded Darkness Palace is really targeting you, then all the more you should stay in the Miao tribe. In this way, at least I can still protect you. Miao Yi said seriously. Chapter 2889. She held Miao Yi's hand, and the corners of her lips curled up, tinged with warmth. The power of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows is unpredictable. If I stay in the Miao tribe, I might cause the Miao tribe to be exterminated. Miao Yi's pupils dilated as she stared at Yi Qing Luo in disbelief. Yi Qing Luo pinched her little face. The Miao tribe has already been affected quite a lot. These few days, I'm afraid you'll be very busy. She succinctly explained what happened with the guards of the Palace of Darkness. Of course, she did not explain that those were corpses controlled by the corpse controlling technique. It only meant that the remaining evil energy on the guards of the gloomy palace would invade one's body. Hearing this, Miao Yi covered her mouth with both hands. That demonic aura, what will happen if it invades the body? If there is darkness in one's heart, it is very easy for evil energy to corrode one's reason and turn one into a puppet of evil energy. Yi Qing Luo's expression was grave. I've already spoken to the judging elders about this matter. If they discover any guards who are behaving abnormally, just kill them directly. Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered. After a long while, Miao Yi lowered her eyelids. Her voice was a little hoarse. Indeed, he deserves to be killed. This abnormality shows that his heart is very dark. There is a dark place. In the future, he will definitely do something to harm the Miao tribe. However, he was still a member of the Miao tribe. She still felt a little sad in her heart. Yi Qing Luo could see through Miao Yi's thoughts as she patted her shoulder lightly. As for the others, as long as you guide them properly and let them force out the evil qi, then there will be no problem. Miao Yi lowered her head and did not speak for a long time. Yi Qing Luo changed the topic as she hooked her shoulder with one arm and whispered into her ear with a smile, "Don't worry, I'll stay in the Peach Blossom restaurant during the day and I'll sneak over to the Miao tribe to look for you at night." Yi Qing Luo felt very warm. Miao Yi's heart gradually calmed down. When she heard Yi Qing Luo's words, she couldn't help but laughed. "Are you looking at me or the overlord? Not cute at all." Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at her and even stretched out her hand to pinch her face fiercely. "If you see through it but don't expose it, we are still good friends." Of course, she could not really leave the Miao tribe. She had to personally watch over Dmo Xian to cure the goo. Only after personally confirming that the venom in Dmo Xian's body had been completely removed, could he be at ease. Miao Yi suddenly thought of something and immediately said, "Let's go back to the Saintess courtyard first. I will go to the Saintess pavilion with my aunt to find a way to cure the goo. Two people working together will be more efficient." Yi Qing Luo was about to nod her head in agreement. Suddenly, his sharp ears twitched. He seemed to have sensed something strange. She narrowed her eyes and furrowed her brows. "What's the matter?" Miao Yi sensed the change in Yi Qing Luo's breathing as she raised her head to look at her. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as the expression on her face turned gentle as she laughed lightly. "Nothing much, I just suddenly recalled that there's some matters to take note of regarding the demonic qi on the guards from secluded Darkness Palace which I forgot to remind the judging elder." As she spoke, she glanced at a certain place out of the corner of her eyes. An imperceptible look flashed across his eyes. The smile at the corner of his mouth became gentler. "You go to the Saintess courtyard first. I will return to the tunnel and inform the right judge." Miao Yi did not suspect anything. After giving him a few instructions, she walked toward the direction of the Saintess courtyard. Yi Qing Luo didn't return to the land of the Gu King. She stood on the original spot, waiting for Miao Yi's figure to completely disappear from her sight. Chapter 2890. The nearer she got. Yi Qing Luo could clearly sense the fluctuation of the profound qi. That fluctuation surged in the air. Piercingly cold and filled with a killing intent. Here, why would there be such a strong profound qi fluctuation? Could it be that the Palace of Darkness had infiltrated into the Miao tribe? Yi Qing Luo kept her presence as she carefully approached the direction of the profound qi fluctuation. This was an extremely secretive forest. The surroundings were filled with lush trees and weeds which had not been trimmed for years. As far as the eye could see, other than a patch of green, there was a patch of withered yellow. There were no other colors. This was indeed a suitable place to talk about secrets. Because, this place was filled with fallen leaves and bushes. When someone got near, the sound of a pair of feet stepping on the withered yellow could be heard. Yi Qing Luo's footwork was very fast. And as light as a feather. Just as she neared the forest, not a single sound was made. Very quickly, Yiqing Luo saw 3 figures ahead, flickering, moving at an extremely fast speed. Yiqing Luo gauged the distance. Following that, she leaned against a lush tree and closed her eyes. But she turned around. A petite red figure had already appeared. Not far away from the 3 of them, on a lush tree which was enough to hide Yiqing Luo's figure. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes through the gaps of the leaves as she sized up the battlefield. Below, it was a mess. And there were at least 20 overcorpses dressed in the Palace of Darkness Guard uniform. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned cold. These puppets again? How many of these puppets did the Palace of Darkness create? How much mental power did that person have, to be able to use the corpse controlling skill time and time again, to control so many corpses? And what made Yiqing Luo even more shocked was, the puppets that had fallen to the ground could be considered to be complete. Some had their hands broken, some had their legs broken, some had their heads separated. But, none of them were like those puppets which Yiqing Luo faced. They weren't afraid of pain, even if their bodies were smashed into pieces, they could still stand up and attack again and again. These puppets, actually laid on the ground just like that? Yiqing Luo was still in shock about those puppets. Suddenly, she felt a gush of powerful profound energy, like boiling water, surging continuously, enveloping the entire forest. Thick profound force undulations rolled like a tide. Yiqing Luo was so shocked that her chest felt stuffy and she almost fell off the branch. Ah! Bang! 2 screams rang out. It was accompanied by the sound of something heavy falling to the ground. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt strange. It was clearly 2 screams. Why, there was only one sound of someone falling to the ground? Yiqing Luo turned towards the direction of the voice. When his gaze landed on the tall and slender figure in purple, his pupils instantly shrank. A man in a flowing purple robe stood there like a god. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered around him. That peerless face was cold to the extreme. Ah Xian? It was Ah Xian. Wasn't he in the Saintess courtyard? Why did he appear here? Why did he get into conflict with people from the Dark Shadow Palace? Yiqing Luo was just about to leap down from the tree. However, she was stopped by Old Man Tsang. Girl Luo, wait a moment. Look at the person lying on the ground. Yiqing Luo paused. She looked at the place where she had landed heavily on the ground, sending leaves and dust flying everywhere, as well as a huge crater. The dust billowed and a figure was faintly discernible. Yiqing Luo could vaguely see that person's look. She frowned, secluded solitude. Chapter 2891. Why was Yu Ji in the Miao tribe? Why did he fight with Dmo Xian? An. The miserable shrieks earlier were 2 different voices. One was Yu Ji. Who was the other one? Yiqing Luo's gaze surveyed Yu Ji's surroundings but she didn't see the other figure. You. Yu Ji's hoarse voice was filled with rage. He only spat out 2 words. Then a big mouthful of blood came out from Yu Ji's mouth. The thick stench of blood made Yu Ji unable to say a complete sentence. Yu Ji coughed out a few painful coughs, his eyes were bloodshot with hatred and his face was pale as he stared at Dmo Xian. His body was trembling uncontrollably. Exchanging glances with Dmo Xian, he only felt that his entire body seemed to be pierced by many sharp needles. Needle after needle, densely pierced on every corner of his body. Under this kind of powerful pressure, there was no one who could resist it. Even Yu Ji, who had always thought highly of himself, had no choice but to accept the hatred in his heart. The godlike overlord was definitely not an undeserved reputation. Just a glance, a light wave of his sleeves and he could take away his life directly. Yu Ji's heart was like a surging tide, setting off a raging wave. Dmo Xian's expression was calm as he looked at Yu Ji indifferently. Piercingly cold profound chi lingered and revolved around his body. The surrounding air seemed to have congealed. Yiqing Luo who wasn't in Dmo Xian's attack range. She could feel that her heart was being squeezed, making it hard for her to breathe. Ah, a heart-wrenching scream pierced the air. That voice was heard from Yuji's direction. But that voice didn't sound like Yuji's voice. Suddenly, Yuji's body sat up straight. Following that, as though he was being controlled by something, his body kept on trembling. A black figure bounced out from Yuji's body. That black figure was bounced onto the ground and kept on rolling, giving out a miserable shriek. At the same time, the moment the black figure was bounced out, Yuji's body fell down softly. What was that? It actually ran out from Yuji's body? Yiqing Luo pressed down on her uncomfortable heart as she propped herself up and looked over. The black shadow lying on the ground was somewhat similar to the appearance of Old Man Tsang's spirit body. It was faintly discernible and illusory. He was covered in a large black robe, and his entire body was shrunk into the black robe, making it impossible to see his appearance. Insignificant tricks and you dare to display your slight skill in front of an expert? Dmo Xian's cold voice reverberated in this tranquil forest. The man's face was cold and emotionless. A pair of inky peach blossom eyes, deep and piercingly cold. Overlord, I beg you, please let me live. I'm just a spiritual consciousness, just a spiritual consciousness. Yin writhed on the ground and begged pitifully. As soon as the voice was heard, instantly, it made Yiqing Luo's eyes flicker slightly. This voice, neither male nor female. It was also extremely sharp and ear-piercing. She had only heard it once, and she would never forget it. The body that controlled Miao Rongrong. The person who controlled the secluded palace's guards, created dense demonic qi, and knew how to control corpses. That person, after escaping from Miao Rongrong's body, he didn't escape from the Miao tribe, instead. He stayed in the Miao tribe? What was the relationship between that person and Yuji? Chapter 2892. Injuring this lord's woman, you still want to leave here alive? Dmo Xian faintly curled his crimson lips, a murderous aura flashed in between his brows. A gust of wind rose. The hurricane rolled. It blew his purple robe, making a loud fluttering sound. The 3,000 strands of black hair scattered over his shoulders danced wildly in the wind. He was obviously smiling. But when Yuji and Yin raised their heads to look at Dmo Xian, they only felt that the man was shrouded in a layer of dazzling light. That man was really dazzling, like a king. Unrivaled. Overlord, as long as you let me go. Let me go, I will do anything you want me to do. Yin was scared stiff by Dmo Xian's imposing manner. He stuttered, begging for mercy. Immediately, as though he thought of something, his eyes lit up. I can help that aunt. No, it's mistress of the imperial palace, I can help her control those toys. I can help her deal with the palace of darkness. Dmo Xian heard that, slightly narrowed his long peach blossom eyes. This subtle action made Yin overjoyed. There was a reaction, it meant that the overlord was interested. Interested, that meant there was still room for discussion. Yin immediately continued, Overlord, I know many secrets of the Palace of Darkness. I can tell you, tell mistress of the Imperial Palace. As he spoke, he sized up Dmo Xian's expression, Overlord, you've seen my corpse controlling skill with your own eyes, as long as you have my corpse controlling skill, the Imperial Palace will be able to defeat the Palace of Darkness easily. Yin. After Yuji heard Yin betraying his master for glory, he roared in anger. This roar made him spit out a big mouthful of blood. Yin didn't even look at him. He just kept using his flattering eyes to look at Dmo Xian in a daze. Under Yin's hopeful gaze, Dmo Xian smiled lightly. Yin's flattering gaze suddenly froze. Even though he was just a spiritual consciousness. They could feel a chill rising from their spines. This lord will not allow any unexpected factors to hurt this lord's woman. Dmo Xian's voice was still that elegant and calm. However, the killing intent in his voice caused one to tremble in fear. Yu Yin's illusory body collapsed to the ground, trembling. For a moment, he couldn't even utter a single word to beg for mercy. "Aren't you poisoned by the centrifugal goo? Why would you still do that to that woman?" Yu Ji spoke in a hoarse voice, coughing sounds mixed in. Initially, Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong had the ambition to get Dmo Xian. He was the one who plotted from behind the scenes. Finally, the matter of using love goo. He was the one who had secretly given Miao Yixiong advice. Although the love goo plan failed. But a woman's jealousy made Miao Rongrong use the centrifugal venom on Dmo Xian. But why? Dmo Xian totally could not see any signs of being poisoned. If it was love goo, why had Dmo Xian not mentioned his name for such a long time? There was no such thing as after being infected with love goo. For a period of time, he couldn't see the infatuation that the first person he saw when the love goo entered his body, the person with deep roots of love, should have. And he didn't have the forgetting and murderous intent towards the person he was poisoned by the centrifugal venom. Dmo Xian was obviously. This was for Yi Qing Luo to vent her anger. This was no different from the overlord before he was poisoned by the goo worm. Star. Chapter 2893. Goo? Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes as a tinge of ridicule flashed past his icy cold eyes. "That thing, is it of any use to me?" Yu Ji's face turned completely pale. And at this moment, Yi Qing Luo, who was nestled on the tree branch, watching this scene. Her feelings were extremely complicated. Whether Dmo Xian was affected by the goo, she knew best. Moreover, Dmo Xian's current state looked like he had indeed recovered to normal. Indeed seemed like he wasn't under the control of the centrifugal goo. But Yi Qing Luo knew. She was the only one who knew. The current Dmo Xian. He was still the same person who had forgotten her. If it was the previous Xian. When he mentioned her, his eyes were gentle. In his eyes, there would be a tender glint. And not like now. Even when he mentioned her, there wasn't any fluctuation in his expression. What he said was, "This lord's woman." And not, "This lord's Lil Luo, Although it was just a difference of a few words. But the meaning was totally different. Dmo Xian would appear here. He would fight with Yu Ji and Yu Yin. It was for her. To seek revenge for her. But even so, Yi Qing Luo's heart didn't feel happy. She stared blankly at the tall and handsome man who looked like a god. She couldn't describe the feeling in her heart. And couldn't understand. Dmo Xian, who was in the centrifugal goo mode. Why would he make a move to seek revenge for her, to personally deal with Yu Ji and Yu Yin? Logically speaking, Dmo Xian, who had forgotten her, was only because of the feelings deep in his soul, which made him have a little bit of interest towards her. Which made him unable to really make a move to kill her. But he would absolutely not make a move against the people from secluded palace for her. After all, Dmo Xian wasn't someone who liked to cause trouble. Instead, "We have underestimated you." Yu Ji took a deep breath, as he sneered. He coughed lightly as he laughed. His mouth was filled with blood. His eyes stared intently at Dmo Xian, as his eyes were deep, as a dim light flickered. But Overlord. He opened his mouth again, as his voice revealed a trace of ruthless coldness. "Do you really think you're the true god of the world, ruling over all living beings?" "No, impossible. In front of our venerable one, you're just an ant that can be squashed to death at any time." After he finished this sentence, he said. His chest churned. he spat out a mouthful of blood. But he was still laughing maniacally, as if he didn't fear death at all. Dmo Xian's gaze was faint as he looked at Yu Ji calmly and disdainfully. He did not care about Yu Ji's words at all. To him, the words of people who were unimportant to him were just nonsense. However, Yiqing Luo, who was nestled on the tree branch, upon hearing Yu Ji's belittling words about Dmo Xian, couldn't hold it in any longer. How could this bunch of scum talk about her and humiliate her? She couldn't care less. However, in front of her, to belittle Dmo Xian like that, she could not tolerate it. Swish, a figure flitted past the forest and flew straight away. Pa, following that, an extremely loud slap resounded in the sky. Yu Ji only felt a burning pain on his face. Even his ears were buzzing. A few of his teeth were also knocked out, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. He didn't even have time to react. His chest was squeezed by an intense pain. A powerful force pressed down on his body, making him unable to move. Yu Ji was in heart-wrenching pain, as he tried his best to open his eyes. Chapter 2894. The young lady's looks were devastatingly beautiful, like a fairy, with a biting cold-killing intent in between her brows. The young lady's foot stepped on his chest. That red robe fluttered, like an excited flame. Yu Ji's lips squirmed, spitting out a word, pulling on the muscles on his face, causing him to suck in a breath of cold air. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes, as her voice was chilly. My Xian is indeed not the god of this world, and has no interest in being the ruler of this world. If that whatever revered of yours is really that strong, then why is there a need to be so sneaky, like a dark rat, only daring to hide in the dark, doing those shameful things? Her tone was filled with ridicule. Towards the revered, in Yu Ji's words, it was extremely disdainful. Only know how to push you bunch of obedient dogs out, time and time again, playing dirty tricks behind my back, not even daring to show your face, and you still have the cheek to brag? Your skin is so thick, probably it can even be used as a protective shield. No wonder this slap of mine hurts so much. Yiqing Luo's attitude was extremely arrogant. Every word, every sentence, agitated Yu Ji's pair of scarlet eyes, as his chest heaved up and down violently. But the more agitated he was, the more his internal injury was affected, the more bursts of tearing pain. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly, as she moved her foot away from Yu Ji's chest. Just as her foot landed on the ground, she didn't forget to give Yu Ji a fierce kick. My man, I can't even bear to scold him, and you still dare to belittle him? Yu Ji was in so much pain that he couldn't hold back his miserable cries. Whereas the man standing behind Yiqing Luo, upon hearing what Yiqing Luo said, that indifferent and emotionless face faintly revealed a smile. That rosy red thin lips slowly outlined a faint arc. His entire face seemed to have softened a little. Increasingly peerless. When Yiqing Luo stopped Yu Ji's actions, as she patted her own hands, a strong and powerful arm encircled her slender waist. Yiqing Luo's petite body was instantly brought into a broad embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into Yiqing Luo's nose. Her heart gradually calmed down. Weren't you enjoying the show over there? Why did you come out again? Dmo Xian's lips curled into a smile as he squinted at the person in his arms. From this angle, he could see the girl's fair neck. It seemed to be dotted with a layer of fluffy fluorescent light. It gave him the urge to take a bite out of it. Although Yiqing Luo's back was facing Dmo Xian, but he could clearly feel Dmo Xian's scorching gaze. She bit her lower lip, and her tone softened. He actually compared you with that venerable one who is as sinister as a rat. How can that rat be mentioned in the same breath as you? You're so protective of me. His low, hoarse, and clear voice was as mellow as fine wine, intoxicating people. Especially when he whispered in her ear. This made Yiqing Luo's entire body felt limp and numb. She blushed and struggled with her hands. Aren't you protecting me too? You're this lord's woman, naturally this lord will protect you. Dmo Xian straightened her body, and his slender fingers lifted her lower jaw. That pair of deep peach blossom eyes sparkled with a scorching radiance. In an instant, it seemed as though her soul was sucked into it. Yiqing Luo's heart palpitated rapidly. She was unable to resist the charm of this man in front of her. The two of them were being intimate. That black figure who was curled up by the side slowly drifted towards Yuji's direction. Chapter 2895. Ugh. Yuji's pupils dilated as he stared fiercely at the black figure in front of him. He wanted to speak. But that hand had already stretched out to his chest. The icy cold touch brought along a chilling aura as it directly seeped into his skin. Thick yin qi started to spread from that withered palm. Yuji, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Yuji's sharp voice rang beside Yuji's ear. Following that, his tone turned icy cold as he gave a sinister smile, so, go and die. His words had just ended. The smile on his face instantly congealed. Bit by bit, it turned into disbelief and shock. Yuji's body stiffened as he retreated a few steps backwards. He hung his head down. He saw. That hand which was about to sink into Yuji's chest had already been held tightly by Yuji. An even more intense evil qi spread out from Yuji's palm. In an instant it swallowed all the evil qi which he had released. You. How did you? Yuji wanted to retract his hand. But Yuji's strength made him unable to struggle free. Endless evil qi kept on swallowing all the energy in Yuji's body. Yuji's illusory figure seemed even more blurry now. As though the next moment, it would disappear along with the wind. Their movements naturally attracted the attention of the little lover who was still being affectionate. Yiqing Luo's gaze caught a glimpse of that evil qi and immediately reacted. She speedily pushed Dmo Xian's embrace away, and with a flick of her wrist, the glower flame fan flew out, raising thousands of wind blades as it flew out. Don't even think of escaping. Yuji, who was still absorbing the Yuji's evil qi, felt a strong threat coming towards him. After he had sufficient energy to absorb. The injuries on Yuji's body had already healed up speedily. Immediately, Yuji slammed both his palms onto the ground and with a somersault, he avoided Yiqing Luo's attack. Bam! The entire ground was filled with sand and dust as the earth quaked and the mountains shook. The profound energy surged, bringing about an extreme sense of oppression. A black figure was bounced up from the flying sand and dust. Yiqing Luo leapt up and grabbed that person's black robe. She fixed her eyes on Yuji, who had already gone far away and was trying his best to escape. She frowned slightly and looked sideways at Dmo Xian. Xian, you go after him, I'll guard this person. After she finished speaking, she lifted the eerie black robe and threw it heavily on the ground. Most of Nether Yin's demonic energy and his own strength were sucked out. At this moment, he couldn't even maintain the state of his spiritual sense. It was faintly discernible as the wind blew. You. Yiqing Luo was about to ask when she suddenly noticed that the man behind her had been following her closely. She stopped what she wanted to ask and turned to look at Dmo Xian. Why aren't you chasing after them? Although you're this lord's woman, but it doesn't mean that you can command this lord. Dmo Xian's tranquil and serene peach blossom eyes looked at her without blinking. That pair of clear, cold eyes that seemed to be unable to cause even the slightest ripple were as deep as the sea. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed as she concealed the stinging pain from the bottom of her heart, trying her best to make her voice sound calmer. I'm not giving an order, don't you want to kill these two people as well? Dmo Xian's brows rose as he was bewitching, this lord just doesn't like them. Moreover, since you want to do it yourself, you're this lord's woman, so this lord will naturally give this chance to you. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo looked at the direction where Yu Ji disappeared. Over there, Yu Ji's figure was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 2896. She helplessly stared at Dmo Xian. She had already given up the thought of chasing after Yu Ji. She turned around and continued to look at Yu Yin. The man behind her once again leaned forward and stretched out his hand to encircle her waist. The man's warm temperature covered her. It was the kind of voice that could make one's ears pregnant, whispering in her ear. The most important thing is, you're this lord's woman. How can this lord allow you to be alone with another man? Another man? Man? Yiqing Luo's original intention to struggle froze as her eyes looked at Yu Yin with uncertainty. You mean him? Dmo Xian raised his brows as he smiled without saying a word. Yiqing Luo, this damn thing, could he be called a man? Could he be considered as a man? She wasn't blind. Her brain wasn't stupid. How could she possibly let go of the peerless Dmo Xian who was comparable to a god? Instead, she was interested in Yu Yin, this. From his voice, he sounded neither male nor female, and his entire body was like a dried-up bone monster. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched, expressing that she didn't want to talk to this man who lied through his teeth. Dmo Xian saw her keeping silent as he leaned down. The elegant scent of sandalwood seeped into her nose. Why, are you angry? His voice was low and hoarse, and there was a hint of amusement in it. As though he was facing his pet who was throwing a tantrum. His large palm was still on Yiqing Luo's head as he gently rubbed it. That head of hair which wasn't tied up was also rubbed as it scattered down. 3,000 fine hair, scattered down. It set off that devastatingly beautiful face, which was even more alluring. Dmo Xian's eyes, dimmed slightly, faintly flashed with a trace of excitement. Slender fingers suddenly clasped her lower jaw. The man's peerless face enlarged in Yiqing Luo's pupils. Just as the man was about to reach the young lady's pink lips. All of a sudden, a hand was placed between the two people's lips. Yiqing Luo's other hand pressed against Dmo Xian's chest, pushing him away. Dmo Xian, who was rejected by Yiqing Luo once again, had an ugly expression on his face. His cold face stiffened as his brows creased tightly. All of them showed his anger at this moment. As my man, you can't even fulfill a small request of mine, and you still want to ask for a reward? Yiqing Luo faced the ugly expression of Dmo Xian, but she didn't show any signs of fear or nervousness. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at him with a smile. Then, her soft body suddenly leaned into his arms. Her soft little hand circled around his neck, causing his body to lean down a little. Tiptoe, so tiptoe. Her lips pressed against Dmo Xian's ear. The girl's soft voice carried her unique sweetness and softness, as well as a hint of coquettishness. Anyone who heard it would feel their whole body go limp. Hey, if Lord Dizun wants to get some beauties from me as a reward, you have to behave yourself. After all, it's not so easy to be my man. As soon as she finished speaking, the man increased the strength of his arms and was about to lock her delicate body. Just like a loach, slippery, slid out of the man's arms. Yiqing Luo tilted her head, as she gave him a crafty wink. Following that, she didn't look at Dmo Xian anymore, as her eyelids drooped, looking down at the side, the figure floating, indistinctly discernible. She didn't notice the man behind her, at the instant she turned around. He slowly raised his hand, as he caressed the place where the young lady whispered in his ear. Chapter 2897. Yiqing Luo squatted down as she squinted her eyes, sizing Yu Yin up. The figure that was shrouded in the black robe was already transparent. Yiqing Luo couldn't see clearly what the person under the black robe looked like. Yu Yin. Yu Ji. Yiqing Luo muttered their names. Do you know Yu Han, Yu Nu, and Yu Ming? She mentioned the three of them's names. The figure under the black robe moved. A transparent face which couldn't be seen clearly was revealed from under the black robe. But Yiqing Luo could clearly feel it. A shocked expression came from Yu Yin's face. As though he was shocked, how could she say Yu Han and the others' names so clearly? Looks like we know each other. Yiqing Luo's lips curled. I'm very curious, what's the relationship between your so-called overlord and Godless Island? Yu Yin's body trembled even more violently. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened. If you can answer my question properly and tell me everything you know, I have a way to let you live on. Pausing, she smiled as her eyes curved, live on in human form. The last sentence made Yu Yin raise his head abruptly. As though he had exhausted all his energy, he stared at Yiqing Luo as he spoke word by word. Really? Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her tone was relaxed. Aren't you curious why I can execute the blink movement secret art? Yu Yin's fingers under the black robe curled up. Then he heard Yiqing Luo laughing lightly as she continued, so, I can let you turn from a spiritual body into a real human, and retain all your current abilities. She seemed to have thought of something as she added another sentence, of course, after you become a real human, you must be used by me. Yu Yin was agitated as his spiritual body became even more transparent. Yu Yin himself could clearly feel that all the energy in his body was diminishing continuously. Once, his energy was completely depleted. He didn't even have the energy to return to his spiritual body. Once it exceeded 24 hours, he would not be able to return to his spiritual body. He would die completely. Even his soul would not be left in this world. He had to admit. At this critical juncture of life and death, Yiqing Luo's words, to him, was a huge temptation. Whereas at this moment, Yiqing Luo struck while the iron was hot as she continued to tempt him. Yu Yin, you should be very clear. You can only choose to believe me. Only I can let you live on. With a teasing smile on her face, Lin Mengya's slender fingers slowly stroked the cherry blossom pattern on her arm. He chuckled softly, as long as you nod your head, I will immediately let you witness whether or not I have the strength to help you. This sentence made Yu Yin's tensed heart completely relax. He was afraid of death. He wanted everything that could allow him to survive. He nodded vigorously. The excited Yu Yin also didn't notice it. At the moment he nodded, a wisp of white qi spilled out from the cherry blossom pattern that Yiqing Luo's fingers had brushed past. Slowly, it floated into his body. At the same time, Yiqing Luo pressed on Yu Yin's shoulder and pretended to be mysterious as she closed her eyes. Now, I will temporarily let your spiritual consciousness recover your mental power as a down payment. As for the rest, after you have answered my questions, I will then help you to fulfill your wish. These words, no matter how one listened, it didn't seem believable. But unfortunately, Yu Yin was bent on survival. Chapter 2898. Just as what Yiqing Luo said. Falling into Yiqing Luo's hands, he would die no matter what. He could only choose to believe Yiqing Luo, there was no other way. When that white-colored breath had completely seeped into Yu Yin's body, Yu Yin really felt a surge of abundant energy, growing continuously in his heart. That faintly discernible, translucent figure, slowly revealed its physical body. His entire body's energy had also recovered a little. Although, it had only recovered about 40% or so. But at least, it allowed him to move about freely. This is too unbelievable. Yu Yin stood up in shock, as he raised his hand, and kept looking left and right. How serious was the injury he had suffered? He himself was the clearest about it. In such a short period of time, it allowed him, who was only a spiritual consciousness, to speedily recover 40% of his energy. This was something that even a revered could not do. At this moment, Yu Yin was already deeply convinced that Yiqing Luo was able to help him recover his human form. Looking at Yu Yin's sour and wretched face, one look and one knew that he wasn't a kind person, as he revealed an ecstatic smile. Yiqing Luo expressed that being a charlatan was actually quite fun. Especially when she saw Yu Yin in a daze after being fooled by her. She couldn't help but wanted to laugh. No wonder there were so many charlatans, fake divine doctors existing. She tried her best to suppress her laughter, as she promptly removed her hand in a serious manner. When she released her hand, she didn't forget to intentionally make her face slightly pale. Yiqing Luo's face was pale, as she heaved a long sigh of turbid air. When she was retreating, her body also swayed a few times. The man behind her cooperated and supported her. One hand encircled her slender waist. He held her soft and delicate body in his arms. Yiqing Luo struggled slightly, but was unable to break free. She still had to continue her act, so naturally she didn't dare to struggle too much. She could only brace herself, as she leaned into Dmo Xian's embrace. Then she raised her hand, her slender fair fingers, as she gently pressed against her forehead, which had non-existent perspiration, as though she had expended too much energy. Alright, let's temporarily restore this spiritual consciousness's internal injury. Yiqing Luo said weakly, as her eyes swept across the gloomy atmosphere. Then, in her mind, a voice reminded her, spiritual consciousness is controlled by spiritual energy. My spiritual energy is not as strong as yours, so it's not easy for me to recover. If you really want to live in a human form, you have to find your spiritual body. His eyes lit up. He grinned and laughed excitedly. Good. Auntie, Di Zun. Madame Di Zun, I will bring my spiritual body back. When the time comes, I will have to trouble you. Thank you. Yiqing Luo's words had completely dispelled all of Yu Yin's suspicions. To be able to understand things such as spiritual sense and spirit body so well, he must have the ability to help him regain his human form. Even if Yiqing Luo couldn't do it. And His Majesty, the Overlord. Thinking of this, Yu Yin seemed to have already imagined the scene of him living in the world with a human body. Don't celebrate too early. Yiqing Luo seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief. Her complexion had recovered a little, and with Dmo Xian's support, she straightened up. What you promised me, if it doesn't satisfy me, I will not help you achieve your wish. Yu Yin looked at Dmo Xian, and immediately smiled like a blooming chrysanthemum. Madame Di Zun, don't worry, don't worry. This is our deal. What do you want to know? Just ask, I will absolutely tell you everything I know, without reserve. Star. Chapter 2899. Tell me, what is the relationship between Yu Ming, Yu Han and Yu Nu? Yiqing Luo raised her brows and asked. Towards Yu Ming. Yiqing Luo had a deep impression of him. After all, the people she met in the 21st century. She was still curious about what Yu Ming was looking for when he appeared in the 21st century. As for her, why was she sent to the plane of the 21st century? It was purely because. To open the Yi family's mausoleum? Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes and looked at Yu Yin. Is the Lord of Godless Island the one you are loyal to? Yu Yin was straightforward. We are the subordinates of the Lord, known as Ghost Hand 5 Nether. Ghost Hand 5 Nether? Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at Dmo Xian. There was no change in the man's expression. As if he didn't know who the Ghost Hand 5 Nether that Yu Yin mentioned was. Yiqing Luo decisively dispelled the idea of asking Dmo Xian. She turned to Old Man Tsang. Have you heard of the Ghost Hand 5 Nether? No, in the upper realm. If there was such a powerful person, it's impossible that I don't know. Old Man Tsang was also full of doubts. Like Yu Ming, Yu Han etc., these 5 Nether. Every one of them was very powerful. And the power behind them was obviously not simple. It was impossible that they were unknown people. But Old Man Tsang rummaged through his memories. He had never heard of this name. He had never heard of the legend of Ghost Hand 5 Nether on Godless Island. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and pondered for a moment. After you became a weapon spirit, you never woke up again, could it be? This, Ghost Hand 5 Nether, is an organization that appeared after you became a weapon spirit? Old man Tsang, it's possible. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes and sized Yuan up for a while. You 5 Nether are the only subordinates of the Lord? Although we 5 Nether grew up together, but our relationship is not harmonious. Between each of us, we have our own ambitions, we all want to surpass each other, to become the person who can be valued by the Lord. At the mention of the other 4 underworlds, the gloomy light in his eyes darkened a little. Because I'm an anomaly, the Venerable One left my spiritual body behind in order to preserve the purity of my mental energy, so he let me work for him in secret. Each of us has a different mission. If it is not necessary, we are not allowed to tell each other about our mission. I carry out missions in secret and rarely interact with them. Therefore, my relationship with them can't be considered close. Yuan paused for a moment before continuing. As far as I know, the Venerable One subordinates are definitely not only the 5 Nether. I was in the dark, so I could see more clearly. To be precise, we, the 5 Nethers, are merely pawns used by the Venerable One to probe the Nirvana realm. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her eyelashes fluttered a few times. Even though she and Wu Nether had never had a proper duel, Wu Nether and Wu Nether had never had a proper duel. But Yi Qing Luo was certain that their 5 Nether's abilities were all above sky-profound grade. He could feel it from the few times she fought with Yu Ji. And these 5 people could only be regarded as abandoned pawns? How many capable people were behind this so-called Venerable One? Chapter 2900. Logically speaking, except for the dark forces that were outside of the upper realm, only the real forces that were above the Nirvana realm would think of invading the Nirvana realm. But, from the attitude of Yu Ji and Yuan, this revered one was definitely from the forces of the upper realm. How could the people of the upper realm possibly take a fancy to such a lowly realm like the Nirvana realm? And for this, he didn't hesitate to design so many shows. Yi Qing Luo took Yu Ming, Yu Nu, Yu Han, and also Godless Island, Shi Shang Lan. All these things were linked together. The more he thought about it, the more he felt a chill run down his spine. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Yuan without blinking. Does your Venerable One know me? Is his target in the Nirvana realm me? Yuan was flustered by Yi Qing Luo's gaze. He took a few steps back and shook his head. The Venerable One's thoughts are not something that people like us, who have been abandoned, can guess. I only know that the missions that the Venerable One gave us were all different. Later on, it seemed like one of us left the mission and disappeared. Even the Venerable One couldn't find him. Because all the missions had been disrupted, the Venerable One had to rearrange them. Yu Ji and I were arranged to come to the North Wave continent and join the Dark Nether Palace. I wasn't clear about Secluded Solitude's mission and I didn't try to understand it. The mission that the Venerable One gave me was to collect the perfect toys in the Northern Wave continent and use the corpse controlling art to create more puppets for the Palace of Darkness to use. Join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness? Yi Qing Luo caught onto this crucial point. In other words, the Palace of Darkness was actually not built by that Venerable. Instead, he would join the Palace of Darkness as a helper and help the Palace of Darkness? In that case, what was the relationship between the Venerable One and the Dark Forces? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she thought of another more important question: how many puppets have you created for the Palace of Seclusion? She had personally seen those puppets. He knew very well how powerful those puppets were. Unafraid of death, unafraid of pain. It couldn't be killed, nor could it be stopped. If the Palace of Gloomy Darkness used these undead puppets to attack the Imperial Palace, the Imperial Palace must have suffered heavy losses. Before this, the venom in Dmo Xian's body had not been detoxified. The imperial palace might really face the fate of being destroyed. Thinking in this way, the expression on Yiqing Luo's face became even more grave. About 3,000, more than 3,000 puppets. When Yuan mentioned this figure, he took a glance at Yiqing Luo apprehensively. On seeing Yiqing Luo's darkened expression, Yuan immediately explained, that is the revered one's request. I can only comply. Furthermore, the venerable one's skill in controlling corpses is actually above mine. Now that I've betrayed the venerable one and submitted to you, the venerable one will definitely choose a new profound practitioner with strong mental power to learn the corpse controlling art. As long as I have sufficient spiritual energy, I should be able to start forging puppets within a few months. Now whether he could continue living in human form or not, he had to depend on Yiqing Luo. Yuan was afraid that Yiqing Luo would be unhappy. She refused to help him fulfill his wish. The more Yiqing Luo heard, the uglier her expression became. Her slender jade-like hands under her sleeves clenched tightly one by one. His fingertips turned white. There were already more than 3,000 puppets. In other words, it meant that at least 3,000 plus profounders with high strengths had died in the Nirvana realm. But, the Venerable One did not seem to intend to give up just like that. Chapter 2901. That Venerable. What motive did he have? Why did he need to create so many undead puppets? Adding on to the dark forces, they were also involved. Could it be? Was Palace of Darkness intending to make use of the undead puppets to invade Nirvana realm? Yiqing Luo's brows were tightly knitted as she pondered deeply. Suddenly, a warm and big palm held her hand. His slender fingers deftly separated her tightly clenched and pale hands. The broad palm smoothed over her little hand. Following that, the arm which was placed horizontally on her waist, slightly exerted force. Yiqing Luo's petite body fell backwards. She fell into that broad chest. A warm kiss landed on her forehead. Gentle, with an elegant sandalwood scent. Yiqing Luo's heart instantly calmed down. No matter what Palace of Darkness wants to do, with me around, there's no need for you to worry. The man's mellow voice rang beside her ear. His voice was very soft and indifferent. Listening to it, it sounded as though he was despising Yiqing Luo for being a busybody. But Yiqing Luo could hear the man's worry for her in his words. Somewhere in her heart, there was some warmth, as it melted. Her brows were tainted with a hint of smile. Raising her eyes, she looked deeply into Dmo Xian's cold and indifferent peach blossom eyes, as a smile flashed past her eyes. Amen, I believe you. This man, under the instructions of the centrifugal worm. Under the circumstances where he forgot her as a person. He was still so concerned about her. He couldn't bear for her to hurt himself. Yiqing Luo tilted her head, leaning on his shoulder, as she gave a low laugh. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, looking at the young lady who was lying obediently in his arms. Her face was filled with an elegant smile, the corners of his lips unknowingly curled into an extremely shallow arc. This smile fell into Yuan's eyes. This made Yuan even more certain that his choice was not wrong. Look at the degree of pampering the overlord towards Yiqing Luo. The overlord, for Yiqing Luo, would absolutely help him to regain his human form. Let him once again become a real human. Mistress of the Imperial Palace, even if the Venerable One really finds someone to replace me and make puppets, it will take at least 5 months. Within these 5 months, with my help, we will definitely be able to make more puppets. Nethery smiled in an extremely flattering manner. He crossed his withered hands and said, as long as the mistress of the Imperial Palace helps me recover my human form, I can start immediately. Try to create more puppets than the Palace of Darkness before the Palace of Darkness finds someone to replace me. At that time, the Palace of Darkness won't be able to use these puppets as their trump cards. Yuan was filled with excitement. He believed that he had the ability to control corpses. This was the crux of why Yiqing Luo wanted him to stay. Therefore, he didn't realize that after he made this suggestion, Li Tianlan's expression changed. Yiqing Luo's eyes, which were buried in Dmo Xian's arms, were slightly suffused with a biting cold intent. But very soon, that chilly intent was well concealed by Yiqing Luo. When Yiqing Luo raised her eyes again, a calm smile surfaced on that alluring face. This is a good idea. The Palace of Darkness has corpses, and if our Imperial Palace also has them, then the Palace of Darkness won't be able to gain any advantage. As she was saying that, she used an approving gaze towards Yuan, but since we want to deal with the Palace of Darkness, then this kind of corpse puppets, other than cutting off the source controlling them, what other way is there to deal with them? This question made Yuan's smile freeze. He lowered his head, as though he was unable to answer this question. Chapter 2902. When Yuan heard that, he hesitated for a moment. His face was filled with unconcealable nervousness, and from time to time, he glanced at Yiqing Luo. Until, Yiqing Luo impatiently kept the smile on her face. He then braced himself and opened his mouth with difficulty. Actually, it's not that there's no way, the simplest way is to smash the puppet into pieces, leaving no room for attack. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Your expression tells me, it's not as simple as what you said. There's another, more troublesome way, because it's the puppet that I created. Only I, my mental power, can stop those puppets. After Yuan finished his words, he took a swift glance at Yiqing Luo. Seeing Yiqing Luo's expression, there was nothing unusual, the gleam in her eyes, there wasn't any special emotion. He then put his heart at ease. Looked like, Yiqing Luo didn't understand what he meant. Not understanding, that was even better. But Yuan was obviously assured, and let it go too early. Yiqing Luo indeed didn't understand. But she had an invincible golden finger, the all-knowing old man Tsang. After Yuan's hemming and hawing words came out, Old Man Tsang started the live broadcast explanation mode in Yiqing Luo's mind, the first way, although it sounds simple, but if it's really done, it's not that simple. You've seen how powerful the corpse puppets are. Not to mention smashing the corpse puppets, even breaking the corpse puppets' arms and legs, is extremely difficult. Especially 3,000 over corpse puppets, if they were to be smashed one by one, and your profound energy is depleted, I reckon only 20 to 30 corpse puppets will fall. Old Man Tsang directly rejected the first method that Yuan suggested. Following that, he explained the second method. The reason why he is hemming and hawing, is because the only way to stop the corpse puppets, is to take his life. His mental power, is the biggest medium to create the corpse puppets. And to stop the corpse puppets, requires his mental power. Of course, what is needed, is not to use his mental power to control the corpse puppets in the Nether Palace. But what is needed, is to extract his mental power, using his mental power, to refine a weapon, then it will be able to completely settle the corpse puppets. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated slightly. Extract mental power? A weapon infused with spiritual power? He's the same as me, a spirit body. He doesn't have a body of his own. And the greatest medium for a spirit body to communicate with the outside world was spiritual power. Just like this old man, the fact that I'm talking to you right now is also the result of mental energy. Old Man Tsang explained, when we, who are spirits, have our spiritual power extracted, we will lose our medium of communication with the outside world and will disappear from this world. That's why Yuan didn't dare to say it out loud. How do I extract the mental energy? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at Serene Yin. Coincidentally, she caught a glimpse of Yuan's careful gaze, which was secretly sizing her up. Yiqing Luo adjusted the expression on her face and smiled at him. He did not reveal the slightest bit of expression. As Yuan had revealed the method to deal with the dead corpse puppets, he felt a little guilty and was deeply afraid that Yiqing Luo had understood, so when Yiqing Luo smiled at him, he immediately retracted his gaze. Yiqing Luo continued to communicate with Old Man Tsang in her mind. Chapter 2903. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her eyes sparkled brightly for a moment. Her brows softened. The corners of her lips unconsciously curled into a faint arc. A warm and amiable smile. It made the surroundings seem as though spring had bloomed. This smile, in the eyes of the two men beside her, gave rise to different thoughts. After Yuan saw Yiqing Luo's smile, his suspended heart was completely put down. After all, Yiqing Luo was just a young lass. She didn't know much. As for the overlord, apparently, he didn't notice the loophole in his words. These two people definitely wouldn't have any ideas on him. What's more, Yiqing Luo had taken a fancy to his corpse controlling skills, which was why she kept him and made a deal with him. His corpse controlling skills were all used by her. Why would she need to think of ways to deal with those semi-finished products? In this way, he interpreted Yiqing Luo's smile in his heart. The expression on Yu Yin's face also became more relaxed. And, after Dmo Xian, who was carrying Yiqing Luo, saw this smile, his face, which had originally softened, suddenly froze. His peach blossom eyes flashed with icy cold murderous intent. This was a gentle and amiable smile. Not a smile for him. Who was it? Who was it who could make her reveal such a gentle, relaxed smile? Who else could surpass the position he held in her heart? This thought made Dmo Xian more anxious the more he thought about it. The expression on his face became increasingly gloomy. Both their inner emotions. Yiqing Luo didn't notice it. Her eyelashes fluttered, and in her smile, there was innumerable gentleness. After a long time, she closed her eyes, and softly, gently smiled. Old Man Tsang, do you trust me that much? Yuan was a spiritual body. Old Man Tsang was also a spiritual body. But, Old Man Tsang, without any misgivings, told her his weakness as a spiritual body. If she had any other intentions. Old Man Tsang said these words, wouldn't he be sending himself to her hands? How much trust did he have? Yiqing Luo's heart was warm. When Old Man Tsang heard that, he totally didn't have Yiqing Luo's affectation. Who are you to me, who am I to you? Do I still need to explain the trust between us? Yiqing Luo's smile became even gentler as her brows were filled with a faint smile. Before he could respond to Old Man Tsang, Yiqing Luo's waist was suddenly strangled. She frowned in pain. In the next instant, two slender and fair fingers gripped her chin forcefully. She didn't even have the leeway to resist. He was already forced to raise his head by the strength of two fingers and met a pair of sullen eyes. Her face was reflected in that pair of sparkling peach blossom eyes. The rippling light was infinitely demonic. Yiqing Luo was slightly startled. It wasn't just the strength on her waist that made her breathless. Even the strength of his jaw. It was also filled with a domineering aura. This man, why did he suddenly go crazy again? The aftereffects of the venomous centrifugal worm? Yiqing Luo wanted to push Dmo Xian away. But she didn't have time to raise her hand. The man's domineering aura had already pressed down on her. His passionate kiss landed on her lips fiercely. Completely unrestrained, sweeping everything that belonged to her. Yiqing Luo was startled by the sudden kiss, and was somewhat stunned. The man's sandalwood scent lingered in her nose. She didn't understand what was the reason for Dmo Xian's sudden action. She wanted to struggle. Chapter 2904. Yiqing Luo had no way to resist Dmo Xian. In front of such a beauty, she almost lost the ability to think. He had to admit it. Her dear Xian. What a torturous little fairy. Not long later, Yiqing Luo had already abandoned her armor. Until she was almost out of breath and collapsed into Dmo Xian's arms. The man finally showed mercy and loosened his grip on Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's face turned crimson red, her little hand subconsciously clutched the man's collar tightly. You, what are you doing? There are other people watching. Inexplicably, he grabbed her and kissed her passionately. If he did not know, he was currently in the cold and abstinence type, centrifugal force goo mode. She almost thought that this man's brain had suddenly been possessed by a certain bug. Dmo Xian squinted his eyes and even stuck out his tongue in a teasing manner, licking his rosy lips as he laughed a little roguishly. Others? Who? Perhaps it was because of the intimacy just now. The man's voice was obviously husky and magnetic. He simply spat out 3 words. Yiqing Luo felt that it was extremely alluring. Yiqing Luo expressed that this man was really poisonous, everything about him. She was not immune at all. Yiqing Luo blushed as she glanced sideways, standing by the side with an incomparably awkward and gloomy expression. Dmo Xian's voice rose as he glanced over. Yuan felt a chill run down his spine as he was a spiritual consciousness. He turned abruptly to show that he had not seen, that he had seen nothing. But the more he behaved like this. But wasn't that the more it proved? Earlier when Dmo Xian suddenly kissed her, Yuan had seen it clearly. Yiqing Luo flew into a rage out of embarrassment as she raised her head and stared fiercely at him, pushing him away in embarrassment. You. Move aside. She pushed harder and harder. The man's gaze deepened. He exerted more strength in his arms. His eyes, which were as deep as the sea, stared at her shy eyes without blinking, and his voice was deep. What? Are you thinking about someone else in your mind, and after being kissed by me, you feel sorry for that person? Yiqing Luo? She gave a question mark face. Who? Thinking of someone else? Who did I apologize to? Yiqing Luo was dumbfounded. Seeing Yiqing Luo's dazed look, he lowered his eyes. His deep and serene eyes were filled with a gloomy glow, dangerous and bewitching. Earlier, weren't you smiling happily? Yiqing Luo continued, with a question mark face. Smiling happily? What the hell was this man talking about? Dmo Xian's brows creased slightly, as if he felt that she was quibbling, so he might as well put it bluntly. Earlier your face was rippling with laughter. If it wasn't thinking of another man, then what else could it be? His face rippled. Yiqing Luo tried hard to recall. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, just now, it seemed like it was because of old man Tsang's unconditional trust in her. Indeed, he was smiling warmly. In Dmo Xian's eyes. Just like that, a smile on his face? So, Dmo Xian was jealous? Moreover, it was the kind of jealousy that overturned a jar of vinegar. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as her lips curled into a joyful smile. Being jealous meant that he cared about her. Dmo Xian cared about her behavior. Woman. Dmo Xian saw that she didn't explain, and instead started laughing, as his heart felt increasingly repressed. He locked her lower jaw again, and closed in on her eyes, as he spoke in a deep voice. Have you forgotten, you're this lord's woman, your thoughts should be placed on this lord. His voice became deeper and deeper. And it carried an obvious threat. Those words that were filled with jealousy. It made Yiqing Luo's mood became more and more joyful. Chapter 2905. What is the Overlord saying? The one I care about the most is naturally you. My thoughts are naturally placed on you. Her eyes were curved, filled with craftiness. These words, this tone, no matter how one listened, it felt extremely insincere. This insincere attitude. It also made Dmo Xian's heart filled with an inexplicable gloominess, as he became more agitated. He frowned tightly, as his fingers pinched even tighter. But the strength was well controlled, not hurting Yiqing Luo at all. Only fixing her line of sight, as their four eyes met. In that case, your heart is indeed thinking of another man. He opened his mouth, his voice was slightly cold, with a biting cold intent. This was a sign of his anger. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she didn't feel the coldness in the air. The smile on the corners of her lips deepened. Following Dmo Xian's words, she nodded her head seriously. The Overlord is right, earlier I was indeed thinking of another man. Her words just ended. A violent hurricane was set off in the surroundings. Withered leaves and branches were scattered all over, dancing with the wind. A majestic and powerful aura enveloped the entire desolate forest. Yuan, who was standing by the side, was intimidated by this surge of energy, as though his consciousness was about to burst, as though it would explode in the next moment. He looked at Yiqing Luo for help. His heart was filled with resentment. Facing the Overlord's overbearing and possessive desire. Shouldn't she be pacifying the Overlord's anger? Why? Instead, was so honest, telling the truth? And saying it in such a provocative manner? Wasn't she afraid that the Overlord would fly into a rage, and kill her to vent his anger? However, facing his pleading gaze, Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to look at him. On the contrary, the smile on her face was getting thicker. Between her brows, it was filled with ridicule and craftiness. She raised one hand, hooking it around Dmo Xian's neck. Her posture was extremely alluring. Why? The Overlord is jealous? Her voice, especially, had a tinge of coquettishness. It made one feel numb upon hearing it. Dmo Xian's eyes flashed a wisp of red light, which disappeared in a flash. His brows creased even tighter, as though he was extremely displeased with Yiqing Luo's question. Overlord's jealous look is so adorable, I feel that. I like you even more now. Yiqing Luo's curved eyes were filled with ridicule. However, there was also a tenderness that could not be concealed. She tiptoed and inched closer to Dmo Xian. The man's handsome face was magnified in her eyes from such a close distance. She pursed her lips in a devilish manner, and there was a sly look in her eyes. Overlord, if you admit that you're jealous, I'll tell you who the man in my heart is. What do you think? Pa. The next moment, Dmo Xian had already rudely flung her hand away. Jealous? Will I be jealous? Dmo Xian sneered, the expression on his face was like frost. Woman, you're too full of yourself. The man's strength was not great. Yiqing Luo was only pushed back a step. She wasn't angry, but lazily twisted her own hand which was pushed earlier, tilted her head, raised her brows and gave a teasing smile. Overlord, are you shy? Dmo Xian frowned, he couldn't be bothered to answer Yiqing Luo. Or, to put it more accurately, he didn't know how to answer. Towards Yiqing Luo. He was unable to harden his heart, unable to do it. And this woman was relying on his special treatment towards her. Chapter 2906. Looking at the young lady's obviously complacent and teasing smile, Dmo Xian's frozen expression slowly loosened up. A sense of helplessness arose in his heart. Just like what Miaoji said. Words could lie. But feelings couldn't lie. He could choose not to believe Miaoji's words. But he couldn't not believe his feelings towards this young lady. His emotions, indeed, could easily be affected by the young lady. Seeing Dmo Xian's gloomy face, staring at her without blinking, not saying a single word. Yiqing Luo teased him for a while, but was worried that Dmo Xian would really fly into a rage out of humiliation and leave directly. She had to worry about this man again. After all, even if this man lost his memory, his ability was there for all to see. If he wanted to hide, even if she turned the entire Miao tribe upside down, she would definitely not be able to find him. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into an evil smile, both her hands once again circled around the man's waist, shamelessly raised her head and rubbed her chin against his chest. I know you're shy. Her voice was filled with mischievous joy, so, the kind-hearted me, will not force you to admit it. That delicate and lovely look. Just a few soft words of coquettish, which easily soothed all the frustrations in Dmo Xian's heart. Especially when the young lady took the initiative to snuggle into his arms. The young lady's fragrance seeped into his heart. The young lady's soft words entered his ears. His heart was already in a mess. This kind of change was completely this body's instinctive change. Dmo Xian himself felt extremely inconceivable. In his heart, he recalled those words which he heard in the Miao tribe's tunnel. And recalled those words which Miao Ji told him. He could no longer doubt the feelings which he and Yiqing Luo once had. Be good, you must know, my eyes are not blind, in this world, I can't find a better husband than you. Yiqing Luo hooked his neck, tiptoed and gave his rosy lips a light peck. Very light, very fast. Dmo Xian had yet to feel it carefully. Yiqing Luo had already moved away, looking at him with a smile. The young lady's face was like a peach blossom, so beautiful that it made one suffocated. 3,000 strands of black hair intertwined with his black hair. It was like a sign that they would be entangled like this. The corners of Dmo Xian's eyes suddenly twitched upwards as he gave off a devilish charm. In Mo Yao's peach blossom eyes, an extremely enchanting black flower sprout bloomed. He suppressed his voice and whispered in her ear, if you meet a man who is better than me, will you abandon me and choose someone else? Does the Overlord have no confidence in yourself? Yiqing Luo wrapped her arms around his sturdy waist as her eyes followed suit, asking back with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Dmo Xian's eyes flashed as he increased the strength of his fingers, pressing her petite body tightly into his embrace. He leaned close to her ear and said, it seems that I have to keep an eye on you. This sentence made Yiqing Luo's eyelashes flutter rapidly for a few times. Her body stiffened as she lifted her eyes to look at the man's face. It was as if he couldn't believe it. Dmo Xian actually answered her question. And, with such a serious tone. One had to know, Dmo Xian was in the centrifugal force Gu mode. He did not feel that he liked her at all. And this sentence from Dmo Xian. Obviously, he had already admitted that he had feelings for her. It was also implicitly expressing one meaning, in the future, he would always be by her side. The smile on Yiqing Luo's face blossomed bit by bit. Brilliant, like a captivating poppy. Chapter 2907. Yuan was originally oppressed by Dmo Xian's aura, as though his soul was about to fly away. In the end, he inexplicably ate a mouthful of dog food. He finally understood why the legendary mysterious Di Zun, who even martial highnesses were afraid of, would fall in love with a little girl from the lower realm. This one was called Yiqing Luo. Her pacifying methods were simply too powerful. She could easily pacify the Overlord's anger. She could even make the Overlord stick to her like glue. Yuan expressed that this mouthful of dog food was too much for him, and he totally could not take it anymore. He braced himself and spoke weakly, that Mistress of the Imperial Palace, I've already said what I need to say, when are you going to help me to regain my human form? Earlier under Dmo Xian's imposing manner, his soul consciousness was more or less injured. Hearing Yuan's voice, Yiqing Luo then recalled that she still had something to do. It was all because the beauty was too misleading. No wonder there were so many monarchs, once they fell into the beauty's arms, they would never attend morning court. She had forgotten about the important matters for the sake of beauty. Yiqing Luo pouted coquettishly as she stared at Dmo Xian. Following that, she pushed the man away and put on a serious expression as she looked at Yuyin, cough cough. To help you to regain your human form, this. She paused as her mind was pondering over the words to say. Seeing Yiqing Luo keeping silent, Yu Yin's expression suddenly changed. You. What do you mean by this? Yiqing Luo coughed lightly as her gaze fell onto those unmoving corpse puppets which were lying on the ground not too far away. She immediately opened her mouth. I still have questions, what's the hurry? As soon as she finished speaking, her half-squinted eyes reflected an extremely shallow cold arc. What? You don't believe me? Since you don't believe me, then, the deal between us. No, it's not that I don't believe you. Yuyin hurriedly interrupted Yiqing Luo's words. But in his heart, he was secretly gritting his teeth. She had already learned so much about the palace of gloomy darkness from him. After betraying the overlord. Today, he absolutely could not return to the Nether Palace. How could he possibly cancel the deal with Yiqing Luo? The only person he could rely on was Yiqing Luo. To be more precise, it could only be His Majesty. Only the Venerable Dizun could fight against the Venerable One. He tried his best to suppress the anger that Yiqing Luo felt towards his insidiousness as he gave an embarrassed smile. Overlord Matriarch, what else do you want to ask? Go ahead, go ahead. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she pointed to the undead puppets not too far away. According to the two methods you mentioned to resolve the puppets, then. The puppets over there, since they have not been smashed into smithereens, they shouldn't be under your control to stop their attacks. But they didn't climb up to launch another attack. Can you tell me why? You cast a gloomy glance at the puppets and lowered your head in embarrassment. I have spent half my life to create these half-finished toys, so, there are still many flaws in these toys. He cautiously took a glance at Dmo Xian's direction. These semi-finished products are created by my mental power. Overlord's mental power is above mine. He attacked these semi-finished products and cut off my mind control, so. That was to say, as long as one's mental strength was above Yuyin. It was much easier to deal with those undead corpse puppets. Yiqing Luo nodded her head thoughtfully. This time, Yuyin didn't dare to open his mouth to urge Yiqing Luo. Chapter 2908. Yiqing Luo didn't let Yuyin wait for too long. She pondered for a moment. Suddenly, as though she heard something, she raised her head slightly and stared at Yuyin with a smile which didn't look like a smile for a long time. It made Yuyin's hair stand on end. Yiqing Luo then slowly curled her lips, revealing a smile with deep meaning. Her head nodded unnoticeably, as though she was responding to something. Her eyes were filled with craftiness. Let me ask you one last question. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth with a smile. This sentence made Yuyin's taut nerves relax instantly. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his face revealed an expression of wild joy. He was overly excited that he didn't notice the glint in Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo's gaze looked at Yuyin quietly, and then she spoke word by word. The revered sir that you mentioned, who exactly is he? Where in the upper realm is he from? This question came out. Yuyin's joyous expression froze. He shrunk his body and said in a trembling voice, Revered one. Revered one he. His identity, even if I tell you, you absolutely have no way to find him. She could tell. Yuyin was filled with fear towards that revered one. Mistress of the Imperial Palace, although your ability in the lower realm is boundless and you can do anything you want, but revered one, he is really someone you can't afford to offend. Even if the Overlord is by your side, you will not be able to find him, because you have no way to reach the realm of the revered one. Every word Yuyin said, his body trembled a little. The fear towards the revered one had already seeped deep into his bones. Yu Yin's attitude. Which made Yiqing Luo even more certain. The relationship between the Palace of Darkness and that revered one was just a simple cooperation. When mentioning about the matters of the Palace of Darkness, Yu Yin sold it out without any embarrassment. But when it came to the revered one, Yu Yin was so afraid. Yiqing Luo organized the important contents of Yu Yin's words in her mind. It looked like this revered one was not just someone from the upper realm. And he was at an extremely high place. The upper realm was divided into the earth realm, heaven realm and God realm. To make Yu Yin insist that she absolutely could not find the revered one and reach that realm. Could it be that the revered one was from God realm? No, no, no. God realm, how could the people of the God realm have any thoughts about a lower realm like the Nirvana realm? One had to know that the people of the God realm could practically be called the rulers of all living things in the world. It was almost a legend, a myth. Were there people in the God realm? It was still a puzzle. There was no need to say that the people of the immortal realm had their eyes on her divine phoenix profound heart jade and had specially planned all of this. She had placed the divine phoenix profound heart jade in front of the people of the God realm. Perhaps the God realm wouldn't even spare them a glance. Yiqing Luo directly rejected this idea. Then, he looked solemnly at Yu Yin. Whether or not I can find him, or reach his level, is not important. What's important is, I want to know who he is. Yiqing Luo bent down as her lips curled into a smirk of ridicule. Yu Yin, do you think that by helping the revered to keep this secret, you will be able to return to the five nether, and return to the side of the revered that you mentioned? Yu Yin's face immediately turned pale. No. I can't go back. Ever since Yu Ji absorbed the last of his mental power in order to survive. From the moment he made his choice. Chapter 2909. Go back and wait for him. There was only endless torture. This was how the Venerable One treated traitors. He wasn't going to kill him. He was going to pay with his life. Instead, he used extreme means to make him wish he was dead. There was no way he would go back. He would never go back. I'll talk. I'll talk. Yu Yin clenched his fists. In the end, he made his final decision. He abruptly raised his head, as his eyes were burning, with a tinge of crazed ruthlessness as he stared at Yiqing Luo, the current me. I've told you everything, I'm yours, don't lie to me. You must help me recover my human form. Then, he gritted his teeth and endured the fear that spread from the bottom of his heart. Venerable One, he's from the upper three. Oh. His words had just left his mouth. It was only when he spat out a few words. His pupils suddenly dilated. In that instant, his body stiffened. His face instantly turned deathly pale. His extremely wretched face became distorted bit by bit. He had clearly transformed into a physical body. It actually began to turn into an indistinct soul body that was about to dissipate. Yu Yin looked at his own body in disbelief and fear appeared on his face. He stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo's direction. His mouth opened and moved silently. Save me. Save me. From the shape of his lips, Yiqing Luo could decipher the gloomy words. This change seemed to have taken a long time. Actually, it only lasted for a moment. At the same time, when something happened to Yu Yin, Dmo Xian's long arm had already wrapped around her waist, pressing her into his embrace. Yu Yin's outstretched hand naturally touched nothing. His entire body was powerless, and he slumped to the ground. His faintly discernible body seemed to be suffering from pain. It was as if he would disappear with the wind at any time. Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly as she stared at Yu Yin's pained expression, asking Old Man Tsang for the reason in her mind. However, Yiqing Luo called out to Old Man Tsang for quite some time. He didn't even get half a word of response from Old Tsang. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a fluster. It was a sudden change in the darkness. Old Man Tsang was also suddenly uncontactable. It was as if someone had blocked the mental energy of this magnetic field. This thought made Yiqing Luo's face turn pale. She raised her head and quickly scanned her surroundings. Her little hand clutched tightly onto Dmo Xian's collar as she lowered her voice. Xian, have you sensed anything, any other aura? Dmo Xian sensed the young lady's panic. He squinted his peach blossom eyes and immediately wrapped his arms around Yiqing Luo's waist. With a leap, he had already brought Yiqing Luo as they flew towards a certain direction. Not far from the jungle, a few lush trees intertwined. Two figures were faintly discernible in the forest, looking extremely mysterious. Vaguely, the sounds of people talking could be heard. This guy actually dared to betray the venerable. A cold and delicate female voice rang out. Her tone was filled with ridicule. Beside her, a tall man in a black robe glanced at the woman and scoffed, how dare he betray the venerable one? Ha! His tone was filled with disdain. The woman chuckled coldly, it's also because of Yuji's timely report that we managed to make it in time. Yuji. Seemingly displeased, the woman spat out another man's name. The man's voice sank, that's just a waste who fled. Chapter 29:10. The man's expression softened after hearing the lady's tender words, Yuyin is already dead, let's go back to report. His words had just ended. Suddenly, he swiftly grabbed the lady beside him and pulled her into his arms. His figure swiftly retreated a few steps. Swoosh! Mixed with raging profound energy, it smashed onto the ground in an overwhelming manner. Following that, in front of them, a slender figure walked out from the layers of tumbling airwaves. That man was dressed in a purple long robe, as though a king had descended onto the world, with an imposing manner. The man was forced to retreat in a disheveled state. He hugged the lady and finally stabilized himself, swiftly raising his head as he stared vigilantly at the man in front. His gaze was fixed on that man's arms, on the cold-looking young lady. The young lady slowly walked out from that man's arms. A red robe, like a raging flame, wrapped around the young lady's petite figure, bringing along a body, which made one feel pressured. There was clearly a hint of a smile in her alluring eyes, but it made people shudder. Yiqing Luo. The man stared at the young lady, as he slowly spat out a name. The lady in the man's arms, upon hearing this name, immediately stuck her head out from the man's arms. Under the black robe, a pair of bright and sinister beautiful eyes were revealed. And at this moment, Yiqing Luo also clearly saw the faces of the two people in front of her. Her slender brows creased tightly, word by word, accurately calling out their names. Yuhan, you knew, when these two names came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. The expression on the man and lady's face instantly changed. They exchanged glances, and from each other's eyes, they could see the bewilderment. These two people were not others. They were the two people whom Yiqing Luo saw in the 21st century's plane, using Netherworld's mirror. The other two underlings of the Overlord. Yuhan and Yunu, you're here to silence me? Yiqing Luo looked towards Yu Yin's direction. Yu Yin's consciousness body was obviously getting weaker and weaker. And she was still unable to contact Old Man Tsang. Her heart suddenly felt suspicious. From Yuji's escape from here, the time used at most did not exceed 1 hour. And Yuhan and Yunu so quickly rushed over to silence him? Did Yuji have such a fast speed? Or perhaps, Yuhan and Yunu were actually near the Miao tribe? This thought made Yiqing Luo's expression congealed, as her eyes stared vigilantly at the two people in front of her. Yunu also stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking, especially when she saw Yiqing Luo's face. A sliver of unconcealable jealousy flashed past her eyes. She pursed her red lips in a sinister manner and her delicate voice was cold. Miss Yi is indeed smart to be able to recognize the two of us at first glance. As she was saying that, she shot a sinister gaze towards Dmo Xian. We're really lucky. Not only are we able to see Miss Ye's devastatingly beautiful countenance, we're also able to see the mysterious overlord. This time round, we've really not lost anything by coming here. After saying that, Yu Nu giggled. Her bright red fingernails gently caressed her red lips. Her smile was extremely charming. Have you thought about the consequences of snatching someone from this sovereign's hands? Dmo Xian looked straight ahead, totally not interested in Ghost Girl's invisible and deliberate seduction. His deep and cold voice didn't fluctuate at all. But in Yu Nu's ears, she could hear the murderous intent in his voice. The smile on Yu Nu's face froze on her face. Yuhan tightened her arms, hugging Yu Nu tightly as she puffed out her chest, blocking Dmo Xian's might, her face filled with vigilance. Dmo Xian glanced sideways slightly, as his vision fell onto a lump of something which couldn't be seen clearly lying on the ground by Yuhan's feet. Chapter 29:11 Serene Yin Spirit Body. Yiqing Luo's gaze followed Dmo Xian's line of sight. Indeed, she saw that bundle of spirit body thing by Yuhan's feet. Wasn't it the Serene Yin Spirit Body? When Yiqing Luo's line of sight fell onto the Serene Yin Spirit Body, Yuhan's expression congealed as her fingers clasped tightly and pulled Yu Nu behind her. Following that, she lowered her head and hooked the Serene Yin Spirit Body. Go! Dmo Xian spat out a word calmly towards Yiqing Luo. The moment his words landed, he had already turned into a purple shadow as he flew towards Yuhan. No matter how fast Yuhan was, it couldn't be compared to Dmo Xian. He didn't even touch the corner of the Serene Yin Spirit Body. But he was sent flying by a tyrannical force. Yuhan had no choice but to give up on the Serene Yin Spirit Body and evaded. Which was the instance when he evaded. Yuhan only saw a red shadow flashing past, bringing along an overbearing aura like a raging flame. Yuhan's heart trembled as her pupils expanded rapidly as she looked towards the direction where the Serene Yin Spirit Body fell. There was no sign of the Serene Yin Spirit Body there. Yiqing Luo. Yu Nu's gaze was fixated on Yiqing Luo. The instance when she sensed Yiqing Luo's movement. Yu Nu had already chased after her like a shadow. But still, she wasn't able to stop Yiqing Luo from lifting up the Serene Yin Spirit Body and swiftly leaving. Yu Nu's face was slightly flushed as though she was provoked. In Yu Nu's heart, she had always looked down on Yiqing Luo. She couldn't understand. Why would the almighty, godlike revered be so interested in a young lady from the lower realm? Even for a young lady from the lower realm, he specially sent them, 5 nether, to the lower realm to complete a mission. It was simply like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Bring the spirit body over to Serene Yin. After Dmo Xian stopped Yuhan, he returned to Yiqing Luo. His tall figure blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. Like a majestic mountain range. Yiqing Luo carried the Serene Yin Spirit Body as she looked at the man's back in a daze. Her brows turned gentle. A faint smile appeared on her lips. If we can capture these two alive, that would be the best. Even though Ghost Hand Wuyu was an abandoned pawn that the Venerable had placed in the Nirvana realm. However, the abandoned son knew a lot about the Venerables. He also knew some things that even Yuan did not know. Saying that, Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate any further as she lifted Serene Yin's spiritual body and rushed towards the direction where Serene Yin's consciousness was about to disappear. It was obvious that it had been suppressed by the magnetic field that had been constructed inexplicably in the surroundings. It was almost unable to maintain its form. He wanted to get information about the Venerable One from Yuan. He couldn't wait any longer. Dmo Xian was here. Be it Yuhan or Yu Nu, they wouldn't be able to escape if nothing unexpected happened. All the strength in his body seemed to have been sucked out, and he weakly collapsed on the ground. From time to time, the black robe on his body would scatter and gather together. It was like smoke. Occasionally, the wind would blow. His body would also be blown apart. Gloom wanted to move the body created by his spirit sense. However, he could only watch as his body gradually became transparent. There was nothing he could do. Suddenly, Yin heard a series of hurried footsteps. Bringing along with it a majestic profound energy, it pressed forward speedily. The majestic profound energy stirred up a hurricane, almost blew his originally tottering body into scattered sand. Luckily, that hurricane was closing in. Very quickly, he retracted his own presence. Chapter 29:12. What entered his eyes was the young lady's fiery dress fluttering, as though it was a phoenix spreading its wings, extremely gorgeous. Gorgeous to the point. His pupils felt a stab of pain. But, the next moment, Yin's gaze shifted to Yiqing Luo's hand, on that lump of spirit body. Instantly, his eyes glowed slightly, as he raised his last breath in ecstasy. Quickly let me back into the spirit body, I knew it, you won't bear for me to die, I won't die. Yiqing Luo placed Yin's unconscious spirit body on the ground. Yin immediately wanted to pounce over. But he couldn't exert any strength at all. He was obviously just 3 steps away from his spirit body. But he couldn't touch it at all. Yin's breathing hastened, bring it over. Come over a little, I want to go back into the spirit body. Go back. He who was in the state of spiritual consciousness. He was simply too weak. As long as he returned to the spirit body, at least he could extend his mental power. However, facing his pleas for help, Yiqing Luo didn't move at all. The young lady's lips curled into a faint smile, as she took elegant steps, strolling towards him. That pair of slender legs passed Yin's spirit body. Standing in front of him, looking down at him from a high position, the mental power magnetic field here has been suppressed by your other 2 brothers, are you sure? You can return to your spirit body? Spiritual consciousness was formed from mental power. Spirit body was originally a spirit body. To be precise, it was a person's soul, which had turned into an entity. This kind of existence originally relied on mental power, to be able to communicate with the outside world, to wander in the outside world. Just like Old Man Tsang. And to extract the spiritual consciousness from the spirit body. This was an extremely risky action. The spiritual consciousness would not be able to return to the spirit body within 24 hours. Then the soul would disperse. Moreover, the moment the spirit body was attacked, the spiritual consciousness would also suffer the same damage. Just like earlier. Yin was just about to mention the matter regarding the Venerable. But Yu Han and Yu Nu used Yin's spirit body to stop Yin. Then using some special method, they cut off the mental power magnetic field. Even if Yin's spirit body was placed in front of Yin's spiritual consciousness, probably the Nether Yin could not even return to his spirit body. No. I don't want to die. No, you can't. His gloomy voice was shrill as his eyes suddenly widened as he stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Overlord Matriarch, you can help me, you can definitely help me, you can help me right. All the strength in his body disappeared. His body gradually became incorporeal, like smoke, scattering from time to time. The fear of death caused Yin's expression to become even more fearful. He looked at Yiqing Luo hopefully. Yiqing Luo had a way to help him regain his human form. There must be a way for him to return to his spiritual body. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms and looked at him quietly for a long time before her lips curled into an evil smile. Helping you is only natural, after all. We are going to work together. His eyes lit up with joy. But Yiqing Luo changed the topic. Before I help you, you have to tell me what you haven't said first. His dark eyes widened. He stared at Yiqing Luo, as his eyes were filled with viciousness. You. You. Yin seemed to have thought of something as the black qi in his eyes almost suffused him. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes and was about to say something to make Yin lower his guard, not to swallow himself. Chapter 29:13. As he spoke, his body seemed to respond to his words. It gradually became illusory. It was as if it would disappear with the wind at any time. After that, Yin intentionally opened his mouth, as he desperately stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo. However, his mouth opened and closed laboriously. However, he did not utter a single sound. Even his expression gradually became ferocious, as if it was very strenuous. His outstretched hand couldn't be raised at all, and it kept turning transparent. He looked as if he had reached his limit. If Yiqing Luo really wanted to get news of the revered Sir from Yin's mouth. Or perhaps he really needed the Netherworld Corpse controlling technique to achieve his goal. He would definitely not let Yin die just like that. However, when he saw Yin's expression, which seemed as if his soul was about to dissipate, Yin's expression changed. Yiqing Luo was totally unmoved. Instead, she raised her eyebrows and looked at him playfully. Those deep and enchanting eyes seemed to contain endless vortexes and abysses. It was as if he could see through her heart and soul with a single glance. Yin's faintly discernible face stiffened slightly. Yiqing Luo still had no intention to speak. His expression was calm and composed. Finally, Yin, who had come into contact with death and feared death, could not hold it in any longer. His sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo, right from the start. Right from the start, you had no intention to help me, right? Ever since Yiqing Luo saw that his soul was about to dissipate, she remained indifferent and only cared about inquiring about the identity of the revered Sir. Yin had already guessed this. However, he was still unwilling to believe it. He couldn't believe it either. That was why he pretended to be unable to hold on, to test Yiqing Luo. Unexpectedly, Yin's heart sank, and his voice trembled. Mistress of the Imperial Palace, save me, I'll tell you everything about the Venerable. I'll tell you everything. When he said this sentence, his voice sounded like it was about to stop. The entire black robe transformed into a transparent gas. If you want me to save you, shouldn't you show me some sincerity? Yiqing Luo tilted her head and smiled evilly. Yin's pupils constricted, and he took a deep breath in pain and anger. Save me. Save me, Yiqing Luo looked at him fixedly. Suddenly, he smiled. She knew that Yin had already seen through her thoughts. No matter how she asked, Yin would definitely not tell her what he knew. Because this was his last bargaining chip. Might as well. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to continue pretending as she gave a low laugh. To tell the truth, I don't know how to let you return to your spiritual body. Even if you beg me, it's of no use. Yin's pupils turned black. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. You want to live on so much, and I'm such a gentle and kind person, how could I bear to shatter your fantasy? Yin was so infuriated by Yiqing Luo's shamelessness that he kept coughing. Every cough, his transparent body floated in the air like a wisp of smoke. Don't be angry. Once you get angry, your soul might really fly away and scatter. Yiqing Luo tilted her head, her eyes filled with ridicule. You don't have a way to help me recover my human body. You don't. You don't have a way, do you? The darkness in the depths of his dark eyes grew more and more intense. That ball of black qi lingered around his body. Staring at that ball of black qi on Yin's body, Yiqing Luo vaguely felt that her wrist had a trace of imperceptible scorching sensation. The Azure Dew bracelet had a reaction. Then, could she also contact Old Man Tsang? Yiqing Luo immediately pressed her hand on the Azure Dew bracelet and called out to Old Man Tsang. Chapter 29:14. She couldn't contact Old Man Tsang. This meant that the mental energy magnetic field here was still suppressed. But why would the Audioboo bracelet react? Yiqing Luo's fingertips gently stroked her arm, the cherry blossom pattern that looked like a birthmark. His line of sight suddenly landed on Yuan's eyes, which had black edges and was engulfed in black energy. In her mind, what Old Man Tsang said earlier appeared: extract mental energy, refine weapons, then you can deal with the undead puppets created by Yuan. Mental energy. Yuan was able to attract the attention of the revered, and use his spiritual form to create undead puppets, and use Yin Qi to control people's hearts. To be able to do this, his mental energy must have exceeded ordinary people by hundreds of times. Now, Yuan's spiritual form and consciousness were in the same space. Even if the surrounding magnetic field of mental energy was suppressed, Yuan's strong mental energy would still produce some slight fluctuations. And this fluctuation. When Yuan was angered by her to the point that her aura exploded and her rage value skyrocketed, the fluctuations caused were even more obvious. In other words, if she let Yuan's mental energy reach its peak, break through the mental energy magnetic field here, then immediately let Old Man Tsang help to extract Yuan's mental energy. In this way, not only could she use Yuan to break the mental energy magnetic field, she could also extract Yuan's maximum mental energy. This would be of great benefit to using this mental energy to create weapons in the future. Why don't you know the way to restore your human body, but know so much about the spiritual form? I am not willing, not willing. A sharp curse came out from Yuan's mouth. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's words, he wouldn't have been fooled so thoroughly by Yiqing Luo. He really couldn't understand, how could a mere 15-year-old Yiqing Luo know so much about the spiritual form? The overlord wouldn't talk to her about this topic for no reason. Yiqing Luo returned from her thoughts, hearing Yuan's words, her pink lips curved, because she paused and leaned down. Yuan's eyes widened, trying hard to hear the reason. But he saw Yiqing Luo looking at him, using her lips, slowly and silently said, "You're stupid." Swoosh. The black qi in Yuan's eyes suddenly moved. Yiqing Luo could feel that the Audioboo bracelet's heat was gradually rising in temperature. The reaction became even stronger. This also meant that her guess was correct. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly, the smile on the corners of her lips added a few hints of ridicule. "Yuan, I'm afraid you've gone crazy thinking of becoming a human. Trying anything in a desperate situation?" She narrowed her eyes and her voice became even more provocative. "You're right. From the beginning, I just wanted to find out what I wanted to know from your mouth." Swoosh. The black aura grew thicker. "Do you want to know why I know about spirit bodies, and why I can really pull you back from the brink of death when you are seriously injured?" Yiqing Luo's smile was brilliant like a blooming gorgeous flower. She smiled sweetly, and her fragrance was splendid. "That's because I have a spirit body by my side." Yiqing Luo lowered her voice. "I asked that spiritual body to transfer a portion of its mental energy to you. And, to put it accurately, it means that the soul has possessed the body." Chapter 29:15. Slut. Slut. His gloomy and ruthless eyes were filled with scarlet at this moment. He gritted his teeth and scolded Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't mind much as her slender fingers pressed against her lower jaw, as she squinted at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. "Think about it, the revered one you mentioned, for your mental power, he forcefully turned you into a spiritual form, to be used by him. Shouldn't you reveal all his secrets to me, so that I can help you take revenge?" "You dream." Yuan spat out these 3 words through gritted teeth. That intangible spiritual consciousness, at this moment, was completely filled with black qi. Endless black qi, wrapped around Yuan, like a huge black cocoon. Bang! At the edge of the forest, there was an explosive sound. It was as if something had exploded. At the same time, Yiqing Luo felt that there was something flowing in the air. Immediately, Old Man Tsang's familiar voice sounded in her mind. The mental power magnetic field was actually cut off. Luo girl, you have some ability. Old Man Tsang, now is the time when his mental power is at its strongest. Take the opportunity to extract his mental power. Yiqing Luo didn't have time to explain so much to Old Man Tsang. Old Man Tsang reacted and knew the reason why the mental power magnetic field was cut off was related to Yuan. Its spirit body swiftly drilled out of the azure dew bracelet and charged towards the ball of nether Yin that resembled a silkworm chrysalis. Endless black qi instantly enveloped Old Man Tsang's spiritual body. Yiqing Luo took 2 quick steps forward. But she was forced back by that black qi. She clenched her fingers and stared at Old Man Tsang's direction. Her heart felt like it was being fiercely strangled, extremely nervous. This was the first time Old Man Tsang came out of the azure dew bracelet and fought alone. What was Old Man Tsang's strength? She wasn't clear. Only worried. Old Man Tsang hadn't used his skills for almost 1,000 years. If there was a slight negligence, it was very likely to give Yuan a chance to counterattack. In the air, the rolling black qi continued to deepen. The whirlpool waves rolled. Half a stick of incense had passed and there was no response from Old Man Tsang. Yiqing Luo's heart became more anxious. His tightly clenched fingers moved to his wrist bit by bit. She pressed down on the azure dew bracelet, her eyes filled with anxiety. He wanted to rush forward several times. They would all be repelled by that powerful mental power. The time it took for an incense stick to burn passed. The black cocoon's aura showed no signs of diminishing. As for Old Man Tsang, he was still unable to obtain his response. Even the connection between him and Old Man Tsang was completely severed. This made Yiqing Luo's heart even more restless. Just as Yiqing Luo was filled with worry, her eyes were flustered as she stared at the black qi in front of her. An arm encircled her delicate body. In an extremely domineering manner, he pressed her into his arms. The fragrance of sandalwood wafted over. Yiqing Luo seemed to have found her backbone as she speedily turned around and grabbed the man's collar with her tightly clenched hands. Dmo Xian lowered his gaze. Her thick and long eyelashes cast an arc of shadow. His gaze landed on the 2 fair fingers in front of his chest. His fingers had obvious traces of pinching flesh with his nails. His fingertips were still pale. He frowned, his tone displeased. Why don't I see you so worried about me? Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's voice was flustered. Look over there, Old Man Tsang is helping me extract Yuan Yin's mental power. You say, will there be an accident, Old Man Tsang? Chapter 29:16. He raised his eyes and looked at the place where the black gas was swirling. Spiritual body? Dmo Xian lowered his head again and lifted Yiqing Luo's chin as he sneered. You are this lord's woman, you have the time to worry about a spiritual body but not this lord? Yiqing Luo wasn't in the mood to joke around with Dmo Xian. She held on to Dmo Xian's hand which was supporting her chin. You Han and you Nu are not your match, I believe you. But Old Man Tsang is different, he. What's different? Dmo Xian didn't wait for her to finish her words as he squinted his peach blossom eyes and swept a biting cold glance at Yiqing Luo's hand which was intertwined with his as his voice turned even colder. Earlier, you were smiling at that spiritual body, right? Yiqing Luo was slightly dazed by Dmo Xian's unreasonable rage. Dmo Xian noticed that she was in a daze. That was a tacit agreement. Her smile just now was indeed directed at the spiritual body called Old Man Tsang. There seemed to be something heavy pressing down on his heart. It made him feel extremely annoyed. Especially in his mind, the image of Yiqing Luo's gentle smile surfaced. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He pursed his thin lips tightly, not liking this kind of feeling that caused his emotions to fluctuate violently. He waved away Yiqing Luo's little hand which was on the back of his hand. Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo was already anxious from this push and she became even more flustered. Now is not the time to make a fuss. Old man Tsang isn't any other man, he's an elder that I respect. Not another man? Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he muttered these few words. Totally not caring about Yiqing Luo's last sentence. Elder? So what if they were elders? Isn't the elder a man? Now it was respect. He didn't know what kind of feelings they would have in the future. The more Dmo Xian thought about it, the more vexed he felt. He suppressed the restlessness in his heart and turned to leave. However, after taking a few steps, the girl behind him didn't catch up to him with a good temper like before, acting cute and coquettish. In this way, Dmo Xian's heart was even more upset. The current Dmo Xian. He felt very conflicted. Because of Yiqing Luo's indifference towards him and the importance she placed on other men, he wanted to wash his hands and leave. And because Yiqing Luo didn't chase after him or ask him to stay, he was sulking. Most importantly, when Yiqing Luo looked at him earlier, her eyes were filled with anxiety and worry, as though she was about to cry. Even if he wanted to leave, he couldn't move his feet. His heart was tangled and conflicted. This made Dmo Xian extremely vexed. How could he have such troublesome emotions? Why would he fall for that young lady called Yiqing Luo? Why did he have a special liking for her? His mind was filled with chaotic thoughts, and it made him even more frustrated. Why wasn't that woman chasing after him yet? At least give him a way out. Dmo Xian was filled with a bellyful of displeasure as he simply turned around and rushed towards the direction of the young lady. The girl raised her head and stared unblinkingly at the floating black cocoon in front of her. Countless wisps of black smoke were still swirling around the chrysalis. The young girl tightly grasped the lapel in front of her chest. Her pair of charming eyes, which were usually filled with quick-wittedness and craftiness, now faintly floated with a watery glint, as if there was no hope left in them. Her worried feet kept pacing around. Occasionally, she even walked towards that ball of black smoke. A powerful mental power blocked her footsteps. A sharp glint flashed past the young lady's eyes. Chapter 29:17. Yiqing Luo's right hand's fingers opened up. Immediately, the other hand quickly stroked one of her right hand's fingers. A crimson jade ring appeared on her fingertip. The ring glowed with a red lightning-like light. One look and you knew it was not an ordinary item. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes as he stared carefully at that ring. He discovered that there were ancient patterns and totems flashing on the ring under the flowing light. Divine relic, was that an ancient divine relic? Dmo Xian only felt that the ring was extremely familiar. But he couldn't recall it. Where on earth had he seen this ring before? Seeing Yiqing Luo releasing the power of the divine relic, there was a voice shouting in his heart, "Stop her! Stop her! Stop who? Stop Yiqing Luo?" And at this moment, there was no time for Dmo Xian to ponder further. Just as Yiqing Luo released the power of the divine relic to meet that obstructing mental power, he had already stepped forward and grabbed Yiqing Luo's body. The moment Dmo Xian's hand pressed on Yiqing Luo's body, Yiqing Luo's surging profound energy was instantly suppressed. This change made Yiqing Luo's slender brows knitted tightly as she raised her hand and wanted to push the man away. "Do you feel that you're tired of living?" The man's cold voice was filled with anger and reprimand. Yiqing Luo's pushing hand froze. She raised her eyes and stared at Dmo Xian. And in his eyes, she saw a trace of sullen coldness. Trying to use the power of the divine relic to forcefully penetrate the mental power, do you feel that your willpower is very strong and want to test your mental power? Dmo Xian's brows sunk as he reprimanded sternly, have you ever thought that if you fail to penetrate the mental power, your own mental power will be destroyed? Because of Dmo Xian's inexplicable jealousy, Yiqing Luo's heart was already very uncomfortable. At this moment, she was reprimanded by Dmo Xian again. Yiqing Luo bit her lips as she felt wronged. Didn't you feel that I'm fickle and frivolous and don't want to care about me? Why did you come back for? What are you doing? That was like a little girl's demeanor. This made the gloomy feeling in Dmo Xian's heart finally cleared up a little. Dmo Xian clasped her hand tightly and flung her behind him without any tender feelings for the fairer sex. Stay at one side. Yiqing Luo staggered a few steps. By the time she steadied herself, the man had already leaped into the chrysalis that was shrouded in black gas. She didn't even have time to say a word of warning. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth and curled her fingers tightly. This was the reason why Dmo Xian intentionally shook her off. It was so that she wouldn't be able to stabilize herself, so that she wouldn't have the time to stop him and take the chance to take the risk. She did not want Dmo Xian to run into the black gas. He just wanted to know how to help old man Tsang from his mouth. When facing Yu Han and Yu Nu, she was not worried about Dmo Xian. That was because she could more or less guess Yu Han's and Yu Nu's strength. He was also certain that Dmo Xian would not be injured. But, it was a mass of black gas. It was a ball of powerful spiritual energy. It was an unknown power. She couldn't get close. She couldn't be sure if Dmo Xian would be safe or not. Looking at that mass of chrysalis that was tumbling faster and faster, Yiqing Luo's heart felt more and more uneasy and flustered. Earlier, she was only worried about old man Tsang alone. Now, she had to worry about the both of them. Yiqing Luo's heart was tightly clenched into a ball. Chapter 29:18. Another half a stick of incense had passed. The raging black qi was still rolling like a tide, with no signs of diminishing. Yiqing Luo's hands were clenched into fists, almost bleeding. That pair of charming eyes didn't even dare to blink. Xian had already put himself in danger. Why? There was still no movement. What on earth was going on? Xian and old man Tsang didn't have any response. And this black qi was still raging more and more violently. Could it be that something had happened to them? The mental energy that was released by this gloom. Was it actually a trap? This thought made Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. Almost without any hesitation, she once again activated the Azure Dew Ring's power, preparing to forcefully barge in. Just at this moment, suddenly a gust of hurricane struck. Only to see a purple figure, flying out. That figure turned a few times, and stabilized his figure in mid-air. When Yiqing Luo saw that person, her charming eyes were immediately filled with joy. Her feet moved quickly, jogging into the man's arms. Two hands, tightly wrapped around the man's waist. Xian, Xian. It was Dmo Xian. He came out. Safely came out from the black qi. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, looking at the young lady in his arms who took the initiative to hug him. His thin lips couldn't help but curled up, curling into a devilish arc. He emptied one hand, wrapping it around the young lady's soft body. Want to be disobedient again? His low hoarse voice whispered softly in her ear. That handsome face was reflected in the young lady's pupils. Yiqing Luo subconsciously, her finger which was wearing the Azure Dew Ring, shrank back. But her wrist was grabbed by the man. I'm not by your side for a while, and you want to mess around? Dmo Xian raised her hand, raising his brows with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Yiqing Luo's eyes drooped, very obedient. I'm wrong. Dmo Xian's eyes were as deep as the sea. This lord, for you, has consecutively taken action 3 times today, and you still want to create trouble for this lord for the 4th time, you think. Just 1 sentence, will do? She could hear the implied meaning in the man's words. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she obediently followed Dmo Xian's words. Then, according to Overlord's intention, what should we do? It said that the grace of a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. This lord has helped you 3 times a day and you're unable to leave this lord at all times. So, you should use yourself to repay this lord. Dmo Xian pulled her into his embrace, letting her delicate body to press on top of his. His words made Yiqing Luo's heart pounded. She thought that she had really been poisoned by a kind of poison named Dmo Xian. All the grievances and unhappiness from before. In the man's gentle words, it had all disappeared. This man was really seductive. Under the centrifuge goose mode. To think that he could even say something like wanting her to repay him with her body. It was even more touching than all the words of love. Between Yiqing Luo's brows, there was a warm smile. She buried her head into Dmo Xian's embrace, absorbing the breath from his body, and gave a strong N sound. Since Overlord has such a passionate request, I will reluctantly agree to you, to repay Overlord's great kindness with my body. Leaning against his chest, there was some slight undulation. It was the sound of a man laughing. Her heart moved, she wanted to see the man's genuine joyful smile on this cold and abstinent face. Chapter 29:19. With this movement, Yiqing Luo's line of sight coincidentally met Dmo Xian's side, a helpless and extremely embarrassed face. Yiqing Luo was stunned and froze. Cough cough cough, that person covered his mouth and coughed lightly. His transparent body swayed in the wind. Yiqing Luo's face turned red. Tsang, old man Tsang, when did you come out? This person was not someone else, it was old man Tsang. Old man Tsang's wrinkled face was full of helplessness. I have always been here, it's just that, in your eyes is the Overlord. Yiqing Luo, it seemed like, when Dmo Xian came out from the black qi. He seemed to be carrying something in his hand. She was so worried that she didn't notice anything else. She only thought. Dmo Xian came out safely. Old man Tsang must be fine. She didn't expect, Dmo Xian was carrying old man Tsang. Sigh, a grown girl really can't be kept at home, my heart really hurts. Old man Tsang's spirit body floated up, holding his chest and crying out. Yiqing Luo blushed, I am equally concerned about you and Xian. Old man Tsang shook his head, indicating that he didn't listen and didn't believe it. This is the old man Tsang you mentioned? Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes, sizing up this white-haired old man. With Dmo Xian changing the topic, Yiqing Luo nodded decisively, yes, he is old man Tsang, the target of your jealousy. Dmo Xian, it was rare for Dmo Xian's handsome face to show a touch of embarrassment. Old man Tsang's attention was indeed diverted. Jealousy? Overlord, that kid is jealous of me? Yiqing Luo spread out her hands and complained to old man Tsang helplessly and fanned the flames. Just because of your smile, his vinegar jar has been overturned. Just because I was worried about you, he got angry and even scolded me. Dmo Xian listened to Yiqing Luo. To be treated as an opponent by the Overlord, this old man is really honored. Old man Tsang's mouth twitched as he smirked twice. No wonder in that mental power. Dizun gave him a dirty look for no reason. Just look at him. At his age. In his current form. What could they use to compete with Dmo Xian? Dmo Xian was still jealous of him. This jealousy was really scary. There's no other way, I'm too outstanding and he's worried that I'll be snatched away. Amidst the teasing, the heat on Yiqing Luo's face decreased a little and her skin thickened a little. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes and sneered, someone dares to snatch it? That cool and arrogant attitude was very domineering. However, there was indeed nothing he could say to refute. Who was so tired of living that he dared to snatch Di Zun's woman? Stop fooling around. Yiqing Luo glared at Dmo Xian resentfully. This man, no matter when. They were all so confident and domineering. Yiqing Luo turned her gaze towards Old Man Tsang. Have you successfully extracted Yuan's mental power? Old Man Tsang's expression turned serious, and he didn't tease him anymore. We almost failed. Fortunately, Venerable Sovereign arrived in time. He has already extracted his mental energy and stored it in the Azure Dew bracelet. Ha! A sneer interrupted Old Man Tsang's seemingly relaxed tone. Dmo Xian glanced sideways at Old Man Tsang and lightly said, "This old man, in order to extract Yuan's mental power, he almost lost his spiritual body." Venerable Sovereign. Old Man Tsang's expression turned cold as he emphasized his tone. Chapter 29-20. Little Luo, don't listen to this brat's nonsense. Old Man Tsang laughed dryly. It's not as serious as he said. Well, it's not serious. A certain Venerable Sovereign answered, but I was almost devoured by his mind power. Old Man Tsang wanted to stop him and retort. In the end, he just opened his mouth and lowered his head. Old Man Tsang. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened when she heard Dmo Xian's words. Why do you have to force yourself? Have you ever thought about what I would do if you were to suffer a backlash from the Nether-Een mental energy? Little girl Luo. Old Man Tsang pursed his lips, but he didn't know what to say. Yiqing Luo's chest was in turmoil. She was worried about Old Man Tsang, and at this moment, she was anxious and worried. She clenched her fingers. She knew. The reason why Old Man Tsang took such a risk was because of her. Under the situation where the Serene Een could not return to his spirit body, Yu Een would definitely die. If he wanted to easily deal with the corpse puppets that Dark Palace created in the future, now was the only chance. If Yu Een was dead, he would not be able to extract Yuan's mental strength. Old Man Tsang took this risk for her sake. If something really happened to Old Man Tsang, then Yiqing Luo didn't even dare to imagine the scene of Old Man Tsang getting into trouble. Suddenly, he felt a surge of warmth in his tightly clenched fists. The man's broad palm covered her small hand. His nimble and slender fingers easily pried open her tightly clenched hands. His strong and muscular arm was also placed across Yiqing Luo's waist. The man's husky and magnetic voice rang out, "It's all in the past." The elegant sandalwood scent from the man's body made Yiqing Luo's flustered and frightened heart gradually calm down. His 5 fingers also slowly loosened. He knows how important he is to you, there won't be a next time. Dmo Xian comforted her in a low voice, holding her hand. His slender fair fingers slowly caressed Yiqing Luo's hand. Under the contrast of that fair skin, Yiqing Luo's palm was covered with bloodstains from her fingernails. You are very important to him, so don't do anything that will hurt yourself. Dmo Xian gently caressed the fingerprints on her palm. The man's fingers caressed her gently. There were thin calluses on his fingertips. He caressed her skin. Bring a kind of ticklish touch. Standing by the side, Old Man Tsang, who had originally planned to receive Yiqing Luo's love rebuke, saw that Dmo Xian's few words had already extinguished the fire in Yiqing Luo's heart. He was touched and was about to open his mouth to thank Dmo Xian. He knew how to dote on his wife. He was a considerate and respectful man. He was indeed the man that his last Luo had fallen for. However, Old Man Tsang's heart was filled with gratitude and satisfaction towards Dmo Xian. It had not even fermented in the bottom of his heart. He received a stare from Dmo Xian. Old Man Tsang was immediately stunned, his face full of confusion. Dmo Xian's gaze turned colder as he narrowed his peach blossom eyes, reflecting a piercingly cold ray. His lips curled into a devilish smile. His thin lips moved and he spat out a few words silently, "Get out of here." Obviously, Dmo Xian did not make any sound at all. However, Old Man Tsang clearly felt that overwhelming aura pressing down on him. Old Man Tsang shrunk his neck. He decisively withdrew into the azure dew bracelet with a sway of his figure. In Old Man Tsang's heart, 10,000 alpacas were running wildly. This kid spoke up for him. He was simply in a hurry to drive away this third wheel. It turned out that he was jealous again. He just didn't want Luo to talk to him more. Was this really the overlord who was poisoned by the centrifugal worm? Chapter 29-21. Oh right. Yiqing Luo, who was lying in Dmo Xian's arms, suddenly raised her head. Her vision swept around the surroundings and ascertained that this time round, it wasn't because she only had Dmo Xian in her eyes and neglected the others. Where's Yuhan and Yunu? Yiqing Luo could distinctly feel that when she asked this question, her expression changed. The arm across his waist tightened a little. She slowly shifted her gaze onto Dmo Xian's face. The man pursed his lips, and an unnatural expression flashed across his face. A red light flashed in his eyes. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. Those two people ran away? Dmo Xian's expression was obviously awkward. Yiqing Luo was shocked. Those two people actually escaped from your hands? Yiqing Luo expressed that she absolutely didn't believe that Yuhan and Yunu had such ability. He was agitated by Yiqing Luo's two consecutive shocking sentences. The red glint in Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes turned incomparably tyrannical. He tightened his arms and pulled the girl into his embrace. A pair of obsidian eyes, like a coquettish mandala, emitted a bewitching charm. Even Yiqing Luo. They were all captivated by his demonic charm. Don't look down on me. The man's low and domineering voice carried a hint of threat. He bent down and touched his nose to hers. His eyes, which were as deep as the sea, locked onto her. His breath was too close. Yiqing Luo felt her face heating up and wanted to take a few steps back. However, the man's strong arms were tightly wrapped around her delicate body. Her eyelashes fluttered. If you can't catch them this time, there will be a next time. I didn't underestimate you. You think that this lord intentionally let them escape? Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes. That's not what I meant. Yiqing Luo didn't understand why Dmo Xian was so concerned about this matter. I know you didn't do it on purpose. Then you feel that this lord is not a match for the both of them, so they managed to escape, right? Dmo Xian scoffed coldly. Yiqing Luo. God, this man was just poisoned by the centrifugal goo and forgot about her. Why did it feel like his intelligence was also swallowed by the centrifugal goo? So what if Yuhan and Yunu ran away? She didn't say anything. He was just shocked and astonished. Why did she feel that Dmo Xian's reaction was even bigger than hers? Suddenly, Yiqing Luo's mind spun as her eyes sparkled brilliantly. She blinked her charming eyes as she raised her head and stared at Dmo Xian's good-looking face. This man, could it be that, do you feel guilty? Because he had promised her that he would capture Yuhan and Yunu alive. But in the end, he failed to do so. He even let Yuhan and Yunu escape. Not only did it damage his dignity as a man in front of her, but it also damaged his bearing as a venerable sovereign. Men were not willing to let their women see their battered and exhausted side. Although Dmo Xian would not be so embarrassed. But, standing in his position, two ants that could have been easily squashed to death had run away. And it was in front of his woman. More or less, he would feel embarrassed. Therefore, Dmo Xian was bewildered and bewildered. What are you looking at? Being stared at by Yiqing Luo's dazzling eyes for a while, Dmo Xian's brows creased slightly as he raised his hand and turned her face to one side. Yiqing Luo's little head arched and refused to shift her gaze away. Her pair of charming eyes were curved as she smiled. I'm looking at you. Dmo Xian was praised, but he didn't feel happy at all. Instead, his brows creased tightly. Just as he was about to open his mouth. Chapter 29-22. Dmo Xian frowned. His body's instincts had already driven him to bend down following the young lady's strength. The young lady's pink lips pressed against his. The warm touch was accompanied by a young lady's unique sweet fragrance. Like a warm current, it flowed directly into the depths of his soul. Dmo Xian's body shook violently. Just as he was about to clasp the delicate softness in his arms, turning from guest to host. The young lady moved her lips away, her slender fingers grabbed the man's robe, her face was filled with smiles. This is your reward. The young lady's smile was a little devilish, her curved eyes revealed a sense of craftiness and quick-wittedness. Dmo Xian's pupils flickered, he raised his hand to hold the wrist in front of his chest, which was so slender that if he used a little strength, he would be able to break it. He lowered his eyes, his fine black hair scattered on his handsome face. His thin lips rose, as though he was smiling. Reward? My dear Xian is so awesome, of course I have to give you a reward. Yiqing Luo was still circling his neck, smiling as she nodded. Awesome? He repeated again, his thin lips deepened, revealing his clean white teeth. No matter how she looked, there was a sense of danger. As expected. The next moment, he had already bent down, his thin lips on her earlobe. His voice was low and husky, extremely charming. Which aspect are you referring to? Awesome? Yiqing Luo's face flushed red. She buried her head on his shoulder, not wanting to look at him. This man really couldn't be flirted. This flirting, his flirting skills were top-notch. She admitted defeat. Dmo Xian gave a low laugh, lowering his eyes to stare at the person in his arms. The young lady's soft touch, and the sweet fragrance, were all scorching his body. This reaction. As a man, he naturally understood. Dmo Xian's deep eyes narrowed, averted his gaze, and as though to change the topic, he took the initiative to mention what happened earlier. Those two used the interspatial scroll to escape. Yiqing Luo, who was still unable to control the rising temperature on her face, arched her head, and snorted, not really understanding what Dmo Xian said. They came prepared. Their only goal was to kill Yuan and stop him from betraying the Venerable. Dmo Xian raised his hand and pinched Yiqing Luo's cheeks. They used a spatial scroll to carry out spatial teleportation and came to this stretch of forest, attempting to extract all of Serene Yin's spiritual body and consciousness, and bring it back to the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing raised his head. Space scroll? The space scroll is a very risky teleportation technique. Firstly, it requires a space scroll as a magic tool. Secondly, he needed a medium to teleport. As long as these 2 points are met, you can travel through any space at will. Dmo Xian explained, they used the space scroll to travel freely in the Miao tribe. This was also the reason why Dmo Xian was unable to capture the cold ghost maiden alive. Those two people, while Dmo Xian was sending Yiqing Luo off towards the direction of Yuan. Then, he activated the space scroll and escaped. Yiqing Luo was already used to the various kinds of strange armaments which appeared in the hands of those Yu. What she was more curious about was, they also wanted to extract Serene Yin's mental power. The Venerable that they mentioned, had spent so much effort to nurture such a strong mental power chess piece like Serene Yin, so naturally he wouldn't be willing to part with this power. Dmo Xian nodded. No wonder Yu Han and Yu Nu would bring Serene Yin's spiritual body. to the Miao tribe. Now that they have lost Serene Een, they should be looking for the next one, to replace Serene Een. Chapter 29-23. I hope so. Yi Qing Luo caught his fingers and smiled. If that honorable expert didn't let the Dark Nether Palace or the other Nether spirits come to find trouble, then, they could settle the goo poison in their bodies with peace of mind. What she was most worried about was, Miao Ji and Miao Yi found a way to cure Dmo Xian. The people from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness would take the opportunity to disturb them. However, from the looks of it, the secluded Darkness Palace did not dare to touch her for the time being. The incident today was caused by Yuan manipulating Miao Rongrong and stirring up trouble in the Miao tribe. Apart from the intentions on the surface, in reality, it was also a test. To test the relationship between Yi Qing Luo and Miao Yi. He was also probing if Dmo Xian had really been poisoned by the parasite. Today, due to a freak combination of factors, Dmo Xian had helped her. Moreover, he said that he was not controlled by any goo worm. Yu Ji would definitely tell this news to the person behind the scenes of the Dark Nether Palace and that sovereign. The reason why they only knew how to play tricks in the dark was simple. Firstly, it was because they were afraid of being discovered by the peace messengers of the upper realm. Secondly, it was because he feared Dmo Xian. As long as Dmo Xian showed no signs of being poisoned, those people would definitely not dare to act rashly. In Yi Qing Luo's heart, she could roughly deduce what the secluded palace or that revered would do in the future. Suddenly, she thought of something and raised her head. He raised his head. Coincidentally, the man ignored her because she was deep in thought for a long time and was about to bend down to tease her. The girl suddenly raised her head. Her eyes met his handsome face. Yi Qing Luo's warm pink lips imprinted on Dmo Xian's lower jaw. You threw yourself at me? Dmo Xian raised his eyebrows, the corners of his lips curled upwards in delight. Yi Qing Luo immediately moved her lips away. That misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Dmo Xian's gaze deepened. Did you misunderstand that you took the initiative to throw yourself into my arms, or misunderstood that you wanted to forcefully kiss me, or misunderstood that you wanted to pounce on me? Yi Qing Luo, she clenched her fists in shame. How could she be so coincidental? Just about to kiss him? Moreover, listening to Dmo Xian's words. On the contrary, she felt that the accident just now was deliberately planned by him. It was all for the sake of teasing her. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath. She couldn't be bothered to continue arguing with Dmo Xian about this so-called misunderstanding. I want to ask you, do you already know that you have been poisoned by the venomous worm? The corner of Dmo Xian's lips curled up into a teasing smile as he slightly restrained himself. His eyes flashed, and his handsome face also became indifferent. Did Miao Ji tell you? Other than Miao Ji, Yi Qing Luo couldn't think of anyone else. Dmo Xian nodded. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips, her nostrils were filled with the man's scent, as though it had seeped into her skin, wrapping around her everything. Because I know, so I'm certain that I'm your woman. Yi Qing Luo raised her head, her charming eyes staring at his face. This is the reason why you took action for me? No wonder, right from the start, she felt that the current Dmo Xian was somewhat different. He clearly didn't remember her. But it happened again and again, just like before. He protected her, comforted her, and said incomparably touching words of love. Because he knew he was poisoned by the centrifugal goo. He knew that he had forgotten, that he had loved her deeply before he was poisoned by the venomous worm. It was guilt. Or responsibility. Driving him to change? Dmo Xian and the young lady's four eyes met. Chapter 29-24. If I don't feel anything, even if I knew you were once my woman, I wouldn't believe it so easily. The man's deep magnetic voice carried a hint of laughter. His slender fingers caressed her cheek. His fingers were gentle, with a slight ticklish feeling, caressing her skin. Although I don't remember you, but I know, you are my woman. That warm touch made Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes tremble slightly. She raised her eyes, meeting the man's deep as the sea eyes. That gaze became heavier and heavier. Like a whirlpool, absorbing her soul. Yi Qing Luo's lips finally revealed a smile, both her hands tightly wrapped around the man's waist. You will be able to remember me soon, soon. Dmo Xian's large palm covered the young lady's head, as he gently rubbed. Listening to the young lady's agitated and excited voice. So soft that his heart seemed to be numb. His brows became extremely gentle. The corners of his lips curled up into a slight smile. Suddenly, this smile froze on the corners of his lips. That handsome as cast face instantly turned pale, almost to the point of being deathly pale. Even on his forehead, there were bulging green veins. That pair of originally warm peach blossom eyes was now flickering with a bloodthirsty red. The man's body stiffened, attracted Yi Qing Luo's attention. She immediately retreated from Dmo Xian's embrace, as she raised her head to look at him. She saw Dmo Xian's face, that green and white face. Big beads of cold sweat rolled down along his forehead. Ah Xian! Ah Xian! Yi Qing Luo immediately held on to Dmo Xian in a fluster. What's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Is it the centrifugal parasite acting up? The man opened his mouth, but that pale lips did not spit out a single word. He forcefully waved away Yi Qing Luo's support. That pair of slender hands, at this moment, the joints were all green and white. How could Yi Qing Luo let this Dmo Xian leave alone? She immediately jogged up. Ah Xian, I'll help you to look for Miao Ji, to look for Yi. They haven't Gu Xiang. Looking at Dmo Xian's painful look. Yi Qing Luo's heart was in a tearing pain. Before Yi Qing Luo could catch up to Dmo Xian, that tall and slender figure that was trying its best to leave suddenly swayed and fell straight down. Ah Xian! Yi Qing Luo's footwork moved as she dashed over swiftly. Just as Dmo Xian's head was about to fall onto the ground, he firmly supported him. The man's well-built body fell into her arms just like that. His pale face was devoid of blood. His brows were still tightly knitted, and it was obvious that he was not feeling well. Yi Qing Luo's fingers trembled as she gently caressed the man's brows. But her hand just touched the man's skin. The man actually let out a painful groan. Her fingers suddenly froze. Looks like his love for you has deepened, and caused the separation. Will Gu's backlash. Old Man Tsang's voice came, let Chi-Chi take Di-Zun to the Saintess yard. Don't touch him for the time being. After a pause, Old Man Tsang reminded, the smell on your body will also cause the centrifugal Gu to attack even more violently. Yi Qing Luo's delicate body stiffened. Looking at Dmo Xian, whose face was filled with pain and had lost all blood. Her hands were trembling. At this moment, she didn't even have the right to stay by his side, to hold his hand tightly, to give him warmth. Chapter 29-25. Old Man Tsang's words made Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes slightly wet. She adjusted her emotions and summoned Chi-Chi from the pet space. When she helped Dmo Xian onto Chi-Chi's back and took a few steps away. Dmo Xian's brows were tightly knitted and the veins on his forehead were protruding, his expression finally showed signs of easing. This made Yi Qing Luo's heart feel an indescribable feeling. Dmo Xian's reaction towards her was bigger. It showed how much Dmo Xian loved her. Under the circumstances where he had forgotten about her, he still loved her so much. The more he loved her, the stronger the backlash. She had never doubted Dmo Xian's feelings for her. She didn't want to use this method to prove his feelings for her. Looking at Dmo Xian's painful look, but she was unable to stay by his side, to endure this pain with him. Her heart was aching more and more. Sacred Maiden Institute. Yiqing Luo had been here once and remembered the approximate location of the Sacred Maiden Institute. One man and one tiger rushed to the room where Dmo Xian rested when the centrifugal worm acted up. Qi carefully placed Dmo Xian on the bed. She was just about to leave to look for someone in the Sacred Maiden Pavilion. When she pushed the door open, she saw Miao Ji and Miao Yi rushing over. When Miao Ji saw Yiqing Luo, the grave expression on her face loosened. "I sensed someone entering the Sacred Maiden Institute and guessed that you should be back. Luckily it's really you. Quickly come and take a look, Xian He. The centrifugal worm is backfiring again." Yiqing Luo saw Miao Ji and immediately went up, holding Miao Ji's hand as she spoke in an anxious tone. "Don't be anxious." Miao Ji took a look at Miao Yi. Miao Yi stretched out her hand and held Yiqing Luo's hand. "Qing Luo, we've been rummaging around the Sacred Maiden Pavilion for a long time and found some clues, don't be anxious." Yiqing Luo's breath froze as she suddenly held Miao Yi's hand. "There's some clues? Can it cure the worm?" "Don't be anxious, let Aunt take a look at the Overlord's condition first." Miao Yi could feel Yiqing Luo's body trembling. She sighed softly as she stretched out her arm and wrapped it around Yiqing Luo's shoulder. To be able to make the usually calm and composed Yiqing Luo flustered in the face of danger, flustered to such a state. Probably in this world, only the Overlord could make Yiqing Luo behave like this. Yiqing Luo tried hard to calm herself down. She took a deep breath and shuddered as she moved away. Miao Ji quickly walked past Yiqing Luo and walked to the bedside. She lifted Dmo Xian's wrist and pushed his sleeve aside. Sure enough, the centrifugal goo has gone berserk. Miao Ji's tone was heavy. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath nervously as her body turned soft. She plucked up her courage and turned to look at him. What she saw almost caused her to cry out. On Dmo Xian's wrist, that bloodline which was like a blood vessel, had now become as thick as a vine. Moreover, it was slowly spreading along his wrist to his shoulder. It was a vine. It looked extremely terrifying. It was as if it would explode at any moment. What's going on? He was fine before. When Yiqing Luo saw that completely deformed blood-red vine, the taut string in her brain snapped. Chapter 29-26. Miao Ji put down the ignited tranquilizer incense and raised her eyes to look at Yiqing Luo as she apologized. "Miss Yi, I've acted on my own, I'm sorry." Yiqing Luo was stunned as her eyes looked at Miao Ji in a daze. She knew what Miao Ji meant. Because Dmo Xian had thought deeply about the relationship between them. He had also confirmed the fact that she was his woman. Therefore, for that feeling, that impulse of loving her from the depths of his soul, Dmo Xian did not try to escape or find excuses to deceive himself or others. Instead, he directly accepted his feelings towards Yiqing Luo. Naturally, he relaxed his feelings towards Yiqing Luo. Their love was so deep that it caused the centrifugal goo to go berserk. "Qing Luo, and she is also." Miao Yi saw Yiqing Luo not speaking for a long time and immediately opened her mouth, wanting to speak up for Miao Ji. Coincidentally, Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she spoke with a calm expression. "I know, you can't bear to see me and Ah Xian quarrel, and can't bear to see Ah Xian leave me because of the centrifugal worm." She pursed her lips and said in a hoarse voice, "I don't mean to blame you." Miao Ji's expression was unprecedentedly heavy. "Even if you don't blame me, I still feel very sorry, because this isn't the only thing I'm sorry for." Looking at Miao Zhi's grave expression, Yiqing Luo's fingers trembled slightly. She seemed to have guessed what Miao Zhi wanted to say. His face, which had been pretending to be calm, now looked a little pale. "Miss Yi." Miao Zhi could tell that Yiqing Luo had already guessed what she was going to say next. She also didn't want to say it at this time. However, there was no way to drag it out any longer. "My time in the Nirvana realm is up." In the end, Miao Zhi still spoke her mind. "According to the rules of the Miao tribe, after the new saintess inherits the position, I will immediately ascend to the upper realm. Staying here for one more day is already my limit." Yiqing Luo's tightly curled fingers suddenly opened up. His heart also fiercely thumped. As expected, it was this news. Ever since Miao Yi became the saintess, she knew that Miao Zhi did not have much time left in the Nirvana realm. He just didn't expect it to be so fast. "I promised you that I would do my best to help the Overlord cure the goo. I really want to help the Overlord personally, but..." Miao Zhi looked at Yiqing Luo's expression and felt even more guilty. She endured the guilt and continued, "If Lord Dizun was only poisoned by one kind of parasite, I would be able to cure Lord Dizun within today. However, Lord Dizun has been poisoned by 2 types of venomous insects. Moreover, the venomous techniques of these 2 venomous insects are performed using the ancient venomous techniques of our ancestors. Moreover, they are 2 types of venomous insects that are incompatible with each other. It will be very troublesome to remove them. Not to mention today, even if you give me another 2 days, I'm afraid I can't guarantee that I can resolve these 2 goo at the same time." These words, to Yiqing Luo, were extremely cruel. But if he were to hide all these and not let Yiqing Luo know, this was even more cruel to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had the right to know everything. "What you mean is, the parasite in his body. You have no way." Yiqing Luo heard Miao Zhi's words for a long time before she opened her mouth bitterly. Her voice was a little hoarse, and he could vaguely hear that it was a little nasal. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.